Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Councilmember Hilton if he will lead us in today's pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is Mark Fulmer here? Great, he is here. We just met last week. Thank you. Going to do the invocation.
Dear God, we are so truly grateful to gather here in these chambers and to be able to administer and to lead this great city into the future as citizens and elected officials. We ask you to please bless this proceeding, that it will have thy wisdom and guidance. We're grateful for the moistures we've received and for the blessing of the relief of the drought at this time. We're also grateful for those who have put themselves in harm's way as our first responders, and please bless them, protect them, that they will be able to continue to assist us and help us in our greatest need. We ask you to continue to guide us, direct us during this time, and we say these things in God's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, be seated, everyone. And item 1.4, City Clerk's report on posting the agenda, followed by roll call.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The agenda was posted on Thursday, May 11th at 11:26 a.m. Councilmember Almaderis?
Here.
Councilmember Bracco?
Here.
Councilmember Klein?
Here.
Councilmember Hilton?
Here.
Councilmember Marks?
Here.
Councilmember Tovar?
Here.
And Mayor Blinkley.
Here. All right, under orders of the day, we have none. Under employee retirements, we have 4, but only 1 who's present. So I would like to read a proclamation of the city for West Stanford, and then I'll meet you. I thought I saw you come in here somewhere. Yeah, I'll meet you at the podium, okay, when I'm done reading it. All right. Whereas West Stanford has served the city of Gilroy for over 22 years, and whereas West began his law enforcement career with the Gilroy Police Department in September of 2000, he has held numerous collateral duty assignments over his career to include special operations, group entry team, major accident investigation team, and driver instructor. And whereas in addition to serving on patrol, Wes held positions in specialized units to better serve our community, such as detectives as both a detective and detective sergeant, traffic unit sergeant. And whereas Wes is retiring from the position of police sergeant and has left his legacy as one of public service, teamwork, compassion, and dedication. And whereas on May 18th, 2023, Sergeant Wes Stanford will retire from the Gilroy Police Department with the sincere gratitude and appreciation of the Gilroy City Council for his years of dedicated public service to our fine city. Now, therefore, I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, and on behalf of the City Council, the citizens, and employees of Gilroy, join in thanking Wes Stanford for his commitment of service and wish him well in retirement for years to come. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Just seems like just a couple of minutes ago I was up here saying thank you for the job. So it goes by quick. I tell my daughter the days drag, but the years fly by. So it's been an honor serving the city, and I've seen a lot of stuff that I didn't really want to see sometimes, and got to experience a lot of things that were really heartwarming, and I have a lot of gratitude for being here. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, also retiring but not present tonight, Public Safety Communicator Monica Beltran, 21 years of service with Gilroy PD. Fire Division Chief Sean Pagambri, 21 years of service with Gilroy Fire. And Fire Division Chief Christopher Weber, 22 years of service with Gilroy Fire. Let's give them all a hand. Okay, on to ceremonial items, proclamations and awards. All right, this is a proclamation recognizing APWA, National Public Works Week, May 21st through 27th. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the state of California and the city of Gilroy. Whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Gilroy to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, be it now, therefore, that I, Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, do hereby designate the week of May 21st through 27th, 2023, as National Public Works Week. Yay. Clap. Okay, great. Yay. Okay, we have one more. Proclaiming June 2023 as Pride Month. Okay, whereas the City Council of the City of Gilroy supports the rights, freedoms, and equality of those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning. And whereas the City of Gilroy prides itself on being an inclusive community and will continue to build a society where every person feels a sense of belonging and knows from childhood that their community supports them, is proud of them, and has a place for them exactly as they are. And whereas the City of Gilroy encourages the celebration of LGBTQ Pride Month to recognize that all people in the community deserve to be treated respectfully, fairly, and equally, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Marie Blankley, Mayor of the City of Gilroy, together with my colleagues on the City Council on this 15th day of May 2023, do hereby proclaim June 2023 as Pride Month. Okay? Yay. And of course, June starts on June 1st, and that is when we will raise the flag. Okay, moving on to presentations to the council. Item 3.1, Annual Youth Commission Presentation. And our Commissioner Lavender Huang, yes, is going to give us this presentation. Take it away. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lavender Huang, and I am the chair of the Youth Commission. And tonight I'll be giving a brief summary of everything we have accomplished this past year, 2022 to 2023. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the Youth Commission is, we're a committee of 11 members between the ages of 13 to 19, and we meet on the second Monday of every month at 6 p.m. to plan and organize youth and teen programs and events. So we started off the year strong with the Holiday Posada event, which took place mid-December at San Ysidro Park. This was actually part of a larger event, but the Youth Commission led 3 arts and crafts stations. So we had DIY jingle bells, letters to Santa, and then also face painting. We had commissioners volunteering throughout the event, and we served and interacted with over 400 youth. Next was the Kids Discovery Arts event, which was pretty recent. It was hosted at the end of April, again at San Ysidro Park. The Youth Commission led 3 arts and crafts activities similar to the Posada, and these ones were bracelet making, games, and then face painting. Our most recent event was Royal Red Carpet, which happened this past weekend at Wheeler Gym, and this was actually the Commission's first in-person led event since pre-pandemic. So we oversaw all the logistics of the event, from outreach to activities to decorations, and we had arts and crafts booths, nail and face painting, and a photo booth. So in addition to these events, the Youth Commission has been conducting research on something we as the youth would like to see happen in Gilroy, which is developing a youth and teen center in Gilroy. So essentially this would be a safe space for youth to meet and socialize, as well as participate in a variety of academic and recreational activities. So some local examples of successful youth centers are the ones in Santa Clara, Morgan Hill, and Milpitas. Some key features of a youth center that make it effective and successful are that it's a supervised and safe environment. It should offer a wide variety of activities that are suited for all interests, and it should allow youth to harness creativity and imagination and be exposed to different ideas. Another important factor to consider when building community centers such as this is the location. So for Gilroy in particular, an ideal location would be near the center of Gilroy or the Civic Center, where it's accessible to all community members and also has access to the surrounding resources such as the library. And then lastly, the reason why this is so important in the first place, why we should have a community center, is because of the benefits it can provide the youth. So some example of these advantages are that it allows youth to engage with one another and socialize, which is especially critical after the long period of isolation during COVID-19. Members can participate in a variety of creative and recreational activities to stimulate their minds and bodies. It can serve as a resource hub to connect the youth with local opportunities and get them more involved with the community. And it also can allow them to develop key qualities such as leadership, time management, and teamwork. So ultimately, the Youth Commission has expressed interest in supporting the development of a future youth and teen community center and can provide further input to any discussion on the topic moving forward. So moving on, just a couple other things we've accomplished this year. We updated our commission bylaws, and our 2 biggest changes was that first, we extended the length of our term year. So we added an additional 2 months to the front, and the goal of this was to have a more productive start of the year for future terms. We also established a new treasurer role who would oversee the commission funds. And then earlier this year, the Youth Commission had started brainstorming an event called Opportunity. We did table this for the fall, but the idea behind this event is sort of like a high school resource fair where we would connect the youth with local opportunities, jobs, internships, and the goal of this would be to foster more youth engagement in the community. Also next year, the Commission plans on attending more conferences and maybe even trainings. There is a particular event that happens every other year where all the local youth committees and boards gather for a day and brainstorm different ideas. So hopefully we see the Youth Commission next year attending that. Then with this term year coming to an end, the Commission wants to expand recruitment and direct more effort towards outreach for future commissioners. And then just to wrap it up, the Youth Commission would like to continue to provide feedback on future impacts impacting our local youth and keep serving as a voice for the youth of Gilroy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Well, hang on just one second. Any questions, Council? Does anyone have a question? Great.
Just a statement. I think they did an excellent job. I think it's really thorough, and I appreciate them providing a voice for the young people of our community.
Yeah. We all do. Thank you. Thank you, guys, all of you. Oh, yeah, clap again. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
There was also a memo that we included,
Yes.
and it's a white paper.
We got it.
Okay, perfect.
Got it. Thank you. Wonderful. My kind of girl following up. It's me. Okay, moving on to item 3.2. This is the time on the agenda for anyone to speak on things that are not on the agenda. And if you wish to speak, please make sure you filled out a speaker card so that we can acknowledge you. And Ty, how many do you have?
I currently have 3, Madam Mayor. That's first is Matthew Tinsley, followed by Robert Zepeda, followed by Wes White.
Okay, so if your name was called, can you please come sit in the front row so that we don't have to wait for you when the prior speaker is done? And also you will notice the timer in front of you when you're there at the, well, it's in front of you too. It should be. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members and staff. My name is Matthew Tinsley. I'm Director of the Strong Start Initiative at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. The COVID pandemic has demonstrated that access to high-quality early learning and care programs is essential for working families. Workers need a safe place for their young children to... Workers need a safe place for their young children in order to keep our economy moving. This is especially true for essential workers, caregivers who can't work from home, and low-income families. Gilroy has lost 20 licensed family childcare providers serving almost 200 families during the pandemic. This reduces options for parents and increases barriers to workforce participation and economic recovery. It's essential that we consider early learning programs to be part of our community's vital infrastructure. There are specific actions that cities can take to support quality early learning programs. These could include updating city policies and enforcement to reflect that childcare homes is a residential use of property, waiving all city fees and charges to register, open, and run a family childcare home, and including family childcare home providers in small business programs, supports, and grant opportunities. Please review the flyer that I provided the City Clerk and an accompanying letter for additional information. The decisions you make have a direct impact on the lives of children and families in your city. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Robert Zepeda.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, public. My name is Robert Zepeda. As a local resident all my life, I enjoy Gilroy being a small town. I don't want big government controlling families, churches, and small businesses. Today, I would like to discuss a topic that many are afraid to talk about. Unfortunately, it has become harder to speak the truth rather than lies. That being said, I noticed the city's website stated that starting June 1st at 9 a.m., the pride flag will be raised and remain there the entire month. To be clear, I do not dislike or oppose someone because they are different. We are all different, and that is fine. This is the United States. Different perspectives and ideas are welcomed. We can have a civilized discussion and debate over what is right or wrong, good or bad, true or false. What is true is the pride flag does not represent every American. We have a flag that represents all Americans. The red, the white, the blue, 13 stripes, and 50 stars. What bothers me is that the pride flag doesn't only represent a specific group, but places them above everyone else. That's not equality. At the end of this month, we have Memorial Day. It is to honor all those who fought and died for our country. They sacrificed their freedoms, liberties, and lives for others. Do we have an entire month of May dedicated to our service members and veterans? No. Do we raise any of the Marine, Navy, Air Force, Army, National Guard, Coast Guard, or POW flags on May 1st? No. It has become politically correct to raise the flag of a group for an entire month and not support those who defend us. Don't be fooled by the colors on it. Not everyone who is gay supports it being forced down others. Not all of them want minors indoctrinated at schools. Not all of them encourage sex shows to kids. Not all of them who say quote-unquote gender-affirming care, which is child sex changes, as health care. The narrative from a few loud, obnoxious, uncivilized people will not speak for me. I will speak against tyranny. I will speak against a falsehood. Men are men, women are women. The American flag and the state flag are the only flags that should be raised in the public life. They represent all people, not just a few. The LGBTQ+ is allowed to live their lives as everyone else is. They are not oppressed. Stop pretending they are. The American flag is the only flag that represents all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Wes White.
Hello, Wes White, Salinas Monterey County Homeless Union co-president, also regional co-director of the Western States for the National Union of the Homeless, which is part of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Just wanted to let you know about a few things that are happening in our area down in Salinas, Monterey County, continuum of care and stuff, related to landless issues or homeless people too poor to afford rent. Right now in Salinas, we're going to have an item coming up for sanctioned encampments, which would be really, I think, a positive direction to be, touting as a leader, in the region. Like running water, electricity, dumpsters, and porta potties or actual toilets is always preferred. Kitchen, bathroom, laundry, shower. These things are just basic essentials that everyone in a household needs if you're in a house. We definitely have a lot of impacted, which is pretty well astonishing that the city of Salinas actually wants to move forward with something like this. It would be a very large property, so plenty of room for everybody, even pets and cars and vehicles, and RVs. Actually, that's already a house on wheels, so that's even cheaper. As well as Monterey County, the sheriffs, they placed a notice and they halted that. So those folks are still there, and so there's a lot of caring that could happen, and our money being spent toward supporting people as opposed to getting rid of them and the mean-spiritedness that goes along with that. Because, we got so much money to do so many things. Instead of hoarding it all. People have nothing, but yet we still have basic human rights. We still have inalienable rights by the Constitution, and being on public property. That's Martin versus Boise, and Johnson versus Grants Pass, which also reaffirms that if people are on public property, you can't just get rid of them. They need to be somewhere, and if you're going to get rid of them, they need to put them somewhere, and that's kind of the direction that Salinas is going. And I look forward to hopefully more cities doing the same.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
One more speaker, Madam Mayor. It's Robert Aguirre.
Okay.
The sound is low, Ty.
I think it's because of the fan.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm Robert Aguirre, the president of the Santa Clara County Homeless Union, which is part of the California Union of the Homeless and the National Union of the Homeless, as Wes pointed out earlier. I would like to talk about my research that I did onto the housing element by the city of Gilroy and the housing that they've designated and the quantities of housings that are available and those that are still under construction, those that are planned. I also noticed that there was no listing for extremely low income. Many other cities in the Bay Area have, besides very low income, they have moderate income, they have market rate and luxury, but they also include extremely low income. And that is reserved for people that can only afford to pay 30% of their income towards rent. And they typically are people that are either unemployable or are currently unemployed, have no place to go. If you're unhoused, living on the streets, you have no place to shower. It becomes very difficult for you to go to work every day. Your things get stolen, sometimes even by the city. And the fact that people don't have a place to go is a real crime. I don't refer to it as homeless. I refer to it as unhoused because people do have a home wherever they happen to be. Home is where the heart is. But what they don't have is houses. So if we use the term houseless, it's more reflective of the real situation. And these are typically not caused by their own fault. Nothing that they did that caused them to become unhoused. It could be an illness. It could be loss of a job. It could be even an illness in the family. Any number of things can lead people to not be able to afford. Something as simple as a $400 debt is enough to put people out in the streets. We did have some measures to be able to keep people from becoming unhoused by providing help and assistance with rent. We have those kind of programs, but those keep people from adding to the number of people that do exist living in the streets right now. But that's not enough. We can't just deal with those people and treat them as like they're the only problem. We have people on the streets that, as Wes pointed out, have inalienable rights, and they're citizens just like everyone else, and they pay taxes just the same as everyone else, okay? So we should treat them with a little bit more respect than what we're doing. And I would like to see the city of Gilroy become more proactive and less just cruel towards people, the way I see it. So please reconsider what you decide going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No other speakers, Madam Mayor.
Okay, closing public comment on items not on the agenda and moving on to council member reports. Councilmember Bracco. Yeah.
Yes, we met for the library district and approved a budget of $46 million for our county libraries. We have total revenue, or total reserves of $39,442. We're very well managed, and it shows. We'll also be installing in the libraries enchanted places for kids. It's a comfortable place for kids to learn. Friends of the Gilroy Library donated $11,000. And as part of being part of the library system, we do spend money other places. We're installing a juvenile justice library at the main juvenile hall in San Jose. We already put one in as a pilot at the James Lick Boys Ranch in Morgan Hill, and it was a huge success. So we're putting one in at the main jail. And we also recognized Gilroy's own outstanding employee, Elizabeth Munoz. She was instrumental in bringing she worked with the Smithsonian Institute at bringing the Dolores Horta display to Gilroy. So we recognized her for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Armendariz.
No report.
Councilmember Marks.
Yes, this last week on Tuesday, the downtown committee met, and we're in the process of dividing that committee up into subgroups that will each be tackling a certain concern in the city. We already have our first four established. They are the carryovers from the ad hoc committee that ended last October. And those four are noise, vacant buildings, a beautification program for downtown, and plywood removal. Number 5 will be selected in June when we have our next meeting, and then the subcommittees will go to work, and hopefully in the fall they will be reporting back to you and the rest of the council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Hilton.
From the Valley Transportation Authority Policy Advisory Committee, we recommended adoption of the Visionary Transit Network, which is VTA's vision for aspirational transit service and represents a collective vision shared by VTA, its member agencies, and riders and residents of Santa Clara County. At the core of the vision are across the board and across the county frequency hours of operation enhancements to today's bus and light rail network. This is a testament to the notion that Santa Clara County's transit market benefits from all-day frequent service over peak-oriented frequent service. These core enhancements will substantially increase the amount of transit service delivered across the county. We also talked about transit signal priority as an important tool to help improve transit travel times. Faster transit is more cost efficient for VTA and helps city achieve their mobility and greenhouse gas reductions while improving access to the number of life opportunities that can be reached in a short amount of time. Jurisdictions can help advance this by creating transit first policies to make this initiative project a success, and to continue to obtain grant funding to upgrade equipment and phase in technology across the county. Jurisdictions should consider developing a transit first priority. Thank you to County Supervisor Arenas and the full board for including 2 motions for her during their budget hearings last week that are important to Gilroy. There will be 2 firearm buyback programs each year, one funded by the sheriff, one funded by the DA. She spoke about the great work the South County Youth Task Force is doing in their latest bold strategic plan that has a focus on getting to the root causes of youth violence and providing pathways for our youth. She was able to get the South County Youth Task Force as a priority program for violence prevention and securing funding for an analyst position that will help achieve the goals by allowing the data to tell the story as well. Lastly, the Santa Clara County Public Health Department is looking for community volunteers to help collect bicycle and pedestrian counts for their Gilroy Moves grant at 10 locations in Gilroy during the month of May. Volunteers will be provided a $10 Starbucks gift card for each 3-hour shift they work. For any questions, please contact my office. Good luck to Los Animas Elementary School, who's celebrating Bike Month by having walk and roll days, Bike to the Moon competition, competing in the county's bike rack decorating contest, and hosting a festival. This May 18th, there will be 3 Energizer stations in Gilroy to support Bike to Work Day. If you haven't pledged yet, there's still time. Gilroy is competing for the top spot for pledges and currently sitting in first place across 2 counties and 35 cities. My office will be hosting one of them at the Gilroy Transit Center from 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., where we will have Caltrain staff join us as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Klein.
I have no report.
Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. Last Thursday, the Gilroy Chamber of Commerce and the Garlic City Car Show Committee hosted the 2023 Shine and Show car show at Gilroy Gardens that I attended. It was a beautiful evening that many people enjoyed from Gilroy and from outside of Gilroy. They enjoyed the park, to see some beautiful cars, and to meet many of the owners there. Not only were there cars, there were also at the show, but there was also nonprofits. There was a nonprofit expo. I think there was a total of 14 local nonprofits that attended, and so it was great to see them out there sort of educating our community on the different nonprofits. So thank you to the Gilroy Chamber for putting on such a great event. Next, I'd like to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude to the local YMCA and Andrea Nicolette, the Executive Director, for hosting the Roadmap to Homeownership workshop in downtown Gilroy this past weekend. The partnership between the YMCA and the Realty Society, a local business, provided an incredible opportunity for individuals to gain valuable knowledge and guidance on the path to becoming homeowners. And the age group of the individuals that attended were right around 20 to 27 years old. The workshop was incredibly informative, covering a variety of aspects of the home buying process and offering practical advice to many that were involved. So again, I want to extend my heartfelt thank you to the YMCA and the Realty Society for their commitment to empowering local individuals in our community. Thank you again. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know what else would have fit in this last weekend. This weekend had so many events going on, community events. Starting Friday and Saturday was the home tour for the Gilroy Assistance League. They are a 100% fundraising entity for youth. All of the money gets donated out to youth organizations. I'm a former president and know very well what that organization is about. I also attended at the San Martin Airport Saturday morning was I'm not going to say this right, South County Airport Pilots Association Disaster Airlift Response Team. That is something else. That is a group of individual pilots who all volunteer their time and their planes for disaster relief. Anytime they are part of the coordination effort with EOCs that our city has and others, and get called out, and it's just an extra way to help. And this is their annual event that is just for people to get to know who they are and what they do. So it was my pleasure to be there. Also my pleasure to be at the Wellness Fair at St. Louis Hospital on Saturday. That was very well attended, to show everybody in the community just what services are available through the county, through other nonprofit organizations, to help people who need, whether it's mind, body, spirit, everything, just all health-related issues. And then lastly was a promotional event at Promised Land downtown, also to support a fundraiser, fully goes to support St. Joseph Center Day on the Ridge. It's a concert that's happening on May 28th. Lastly, the VTA board meeting. At the board level, we get things a little different than Policy Advisory Committee that might feel like we're going to get better services, but I can tell you that VTA is going through the budget process too. And it doesn't look good. And we've got expenses that are exceeding revenues, hired an independent consulting firm to audit processes to help the VTA Association determine why expenses are higher than peer agencies even. Expenses are an issue, and they've got a new CFO, Greg Richardson, so I'm not saying that it's not going to get under control. It just, for someone like me who's been trying to get service increase since 2018, I'm not holding my breath, but hopefully it doesn't get worse. So looking at it that way. Okay, council correspondence. We have none. Future council initiated items? None. Okay, consent calendar. I'll ask first if anyone wants to remove something from the consent calendar. Okay, seeing none, then I'll go to public comment. Do we
No
have
speaker
any?
cards, Madam Mayor.
Okay, closing public comment. So looking for a roll call vote for items 7.1 to 7.13.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, do you have that, Ty?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I'll be
And
doing
we're-
the roll call here. Councilmember Almaderis?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Blankley.
Yes, all right, that passed unanimously. Okay, that brings us to item 8.1, and this is award of contract to Hill International to manage the design of 21 capital improvement projects for the Capital Improvement Program Project Management Services in the amount of $1,160,088 with a project contingency of approximately 10% and approve a total project expenditure of $1,280,000. Darrell, give us this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Tonight we're going to talk about the proposal for the award of the contract that you just mentioned to Hill International. Little background on this project. The City Council adopted its previous 5-year CIP program in 21-25, November 16th of 2020. Consultant services needed to discuss tonight is to advance and expedite the program management and design of 21 bundled projects together to try to get them out quicker and faster. Due to limited staffing and the need for focused higher-level design expertise, we're looking at outside sources here. Project types include 4 different divisions. We got our sewer, we got our water department, our traffic, and our storm drain projects involved in this bundle. Scope of work includes program management services for selected CIP projects, assisting our staff with selection of design consultants from our city's existing list of pre-qualified designers, oversight support for individual project designs, a vast quality control of a project designs, which they have, and final deliverables will include shovel-ready construction documents so we can go out to bid as quickly as possible. The projects in the list here are these 21 that you see here before you tonight, again consisting of sewer projects, water projects, storm projects, and traffic projects. I'm going to go into a few of the details here in a second. One of the major high-profile projects is our First Street and Kern Avenue traffic signal installation. You can see by the diagram here before you, there at Kern and First, that is Caltrans right-of-way. The intersection currently operates at an unacceptable level of service, and it also has new multifamily residential development, generating additional traffic. The project will reduce the delay and improve our level of service. This project will also improve safety for all road users, including bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles in the area. The project will enable reinstatement of southbound left turn lanes. As some of you have heard some complaints about some right-outs only and unable to make those lefts, this will help create that movement and make a much smoother intersection for people to pass through. Another project is our Auto Mall Parkway at Luchesa. Currently, Valley Water is doing our major trunk line through there, as you know. Currently, this one-way stop controlled on southbound Auto Mall Parkway. It also has a poor level of service due to high traffic volumes, trucks and passenger vehicles. This project will reduce delay and improve the level of service. The project will improve safety for all road users, again, bikes, peds, and vehicles. The traffic signal will be coordinated with the nearby at-grade railroad crossing. There you can see the UPR tracks next to the location. Another project here is our Luchesa Avenue Church Street traffic signal installation. This intersection, again, operates at an unacceptable level, LOS, which means it takes too long for certain cars to get through the intersection. A lot of delays, people get antsy, sometimes make bad decisions. Accidents happen when people make bad decisions, so we're trying to alleviate that. This traffic signal will reduce delay and improve the LOS as well. The traffic signal will improve safety for all road users, bikes, peds, and vehicles. It will also enhance circulation once the ice rink gets underway and gets installed. There'll be a lot of traffic flowing through this area, so definitely a big help. Another project would be the Mantelli Drive Kern Avenue traffic signal installation. This is a skewed intersection, which sometimes also causes some conflicts in circulation and people making some bad decisions. This signal At this location will improve safety for all road users. The intersection is close to Rod Kelly Elementary School, if you're familiar with that. It's a long-time area of concern for the city. Gilroy Unified School District and Safe Routes to School groups have also weighed in on issues here. Another project would be the Monterey Street IOOF Avenue Traffic Signal, another traffic project. This is a pedestrian rectangular rapid flashing beacon system installed in 2019, as you can see on the picture here, as part of Safe Routes to School Action Plan as an interim safety improvement. The intersection is close to South Valley Junior High School and the Gilroy Prep School. This traffic signal will improve safety for all road users, again, bikes, peds, and vehicles. Here are the funding sources for these 5 different areas: storm drain development impact fees, sewer impact fees, traffic impact fees, and then we have enterprise funds, sewer and water, contributing to the total of $1.28 million for the consulting services. The selection was done this way. We had a request for proposals, RFPs, were advertised in the San Jose Mercury News on October 7th, 2022. The city received 5 proposals, the first being Allisto Engineering Group, second Consor PMCM, CSG, Hill International, and Kleinfelder. Staff reviewed the proposals and invited 3 firms for interviews. Staff recommends that Hill International, Inc., based on their qualifications and expertise and their experience with similar projects. The action we're looking tonight is to award a contract to Hill International in the amount of $1,160,088 with a project contingency of $119,912 for the Capital Improvement Program Project Management Services, project number 23 RFP Public Works 476, and authorize the city administrator to execute the contract and associated documents. So we do have somebody from Hill Incorporated here to International if you want to have any questions with them as well. So, any questions?
Thank you. Yes, I see Councilmember Bracco with his hand raised.
Daryl, how come we can't manage this in-house?
Currently, our CIP team incorporates 3 staff members, 2 with about 2 years experience, and the third one with plus 20 years experience. So we just don't have the depth to manage a large volume of projects like this in a short period of time. And we want to play catch up on some projects we should have got done a little earlier. So,
Are these projects going to be going on at the same time?
the design will, but all the designs are going to be different timelines. Some will be maybe a 3 or 4, 6 month design period. Some may take a year or over for the more complicated ones. So they're not all going to fall in line together, and we're going to try to space them as evenly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Daryl, I see that First and Kern is going to get a stoplight, and let GPD know that so they can tell people when they're complaining about that intersection, how it now is, that a stoplight is coming, that First and Kern intersection is something Caltrans determines, and B, will have a signal as soon as the signal gets in. So
and that's a great example of one taking longer because we're going to have to go through Caltrans and that bureaucracy to get it approved. So.
Right. And I have another question. As you know, I'm trying to read your email that I just got at 5 o'clock. Yes. Right. But I want to make sure that the public hears this too. And some of it I don't know that I quite understand anyway, especially when you refer to the term moratorium. So you want to maybe just explain what that means first?
Sure. We have a moratorium on any newly paved or surface streets, 3 years for like a slurry seal, a simple seal, and then 5 years for an actual asphalt replacement. So we try to keep any new construction projects out of that pavement during those time periods.
I see.
Okay, so on these programs, most of them are going to be outside of those moratoriums. There's a few on Luchesa, which is really a valley water project, not our city-funded project per se. And there will be the 2 traffic signals there. They're going to have some small trenches across there, nothing big, but we will have 1 storm drain going north-south that will have to be.
Okay, and the reason I was asking that question, everyone, and council, was to make sure that in all of these projects that you see here, that we are also considering the timing of the Better Roads Ahead paving so that we are aware of when we're tearing up a road versus when we're repaving a road, and don't repave and then tear up, but the other way around.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if we do have to maybe put a new sewer line in a slurried street, we'll go back with an AC treatment, which will give it even better value over time. So.
Okay, right. And so your answer was that everything should work together fine.
We're staging it around.
Okay.
We're trying to get some in early and some wait a little bit. So
Right.
We're beyond the moratorium, yeah.
Understood, understood. Okay.
2 questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
question from Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you. First, how were these, what was the criteria used to determine these as a priority projects?
As priority projects, a lot of these were in the last 5-year CIP program that council had approved previously that hadn't gotten finished yet. So trying to play catch up with those so we can catch up with our new CIP that you're reviewing now is one of the reasons that we prioritize those.
Thank you.
Tell your voice is trailing, excuse me, to
Yeah, it
interrupt, but your
trails.
voice is trailing off at the end. Can you
sorry.
just make sure you're speaking into the mic the whole time?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. And then second question, Curtin Metelli, thank you for that. I know that the school is there, there's a lot of pedestrians, the park is there, or a few parks. But I think we know that when there's a stop sign and then a signal light or, a series of stop signs, folks tend to speed when there's a longer area ahead of them in that area, right, a more vast area. So is there measures that we plan to put in place between Kern and Hirosaki? Is that not Hirosaki? What's the next street up, the next main street?
Hirasaki's the next one going
It is
towards
Hirosaki.
Santa Teresa.
Okay, thank you. Are there measures that we can take that are planned to keep the speed down in between that area?
There's nothing in the plans that we have here with this project other than having Pedro and his team out there enforcing those areas at certain parts of time. But it's something, if it becomes an issue, we can look at different types of traffic calming devices.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we flagged it almost 2 years ago that it was an issue. There was a couple of pedestrian accidents sequentially, so
Yeah, we do
we
our
could talk
best.
about that later, yeah.
We do our best to try to train folks to follow the law, but when they don't want to follow the speed limits, it's a difficult issue. So.
Yeah.
That is the intersection where the school district puts their most superb and superior crossing guard, too,
Crossing
though.
guard.
She means business. You don't ever want to, yeah. So, I mean, that's probably with good reason. Okay.
Mayor,
Councilmember Tovar.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the report, obviously, and sort of, as you know, the question I always ask in regards to sort of location and where the company's from, and glad to see that they have a location here in the Bay Area.
Right.
But when we talk about sort of the criteria of scoring, can you maybe share a little bit about what that consists of?
Sure. Matter of fact, one of the project managers on the team, she's sitting right in the back in the green. She lives here in town, so she is local. But as far as criteria,
I did my homework on that, yes.
we look at their experience as far as have they done these types of projects before, and we looked at the depth of the expertise they have, not just a single person who can come and tell us the right things at the interview, but how many people do they have as staff to actually support this? So this could actually look at a team of a couple dozen people helping bring this project to fruition with specialized quality control people. That's all they do is quality control. To designers, to licensed engineers, inspection crews. They have the whole gamut. They do international projects, so they have the horsepower to be able to pull off large projects. We need them to get these done as quickly as possible, so that was one of the biggest.
Thank you. No, and I asked that question because obviously I'm glad to know that it's a local company and we have somebody local. I just wanted to ask that question because, again, I think it's important for people to know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daryl.
Yep.
Can we not use our phones on the dais, please? Councilmember Armendariz?
I heard you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
No speaker cards, Madam Mayor.
All right, closing public comment. And ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second it. Okay, made by Councilmember Tovar, seconded by Councilmember Klein.
This is digital voting, so you can vote there. Passed
Everybody?
unanimously
Okay.
with 7-0.
All right, thank you. Okay, under public hearings, we have none. Under unfinished business, item 10.1, review of the draft ordinance banning the use of certain public rights-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations. And this report will come from Bryce Atkins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Go ahead and pull up the slideshow here. Okay. As the Mayor has mentioned, this is a follow-up item to previous direction from Council to bring forward key policy terms. Oh, can't hear me? Sorry. Yes, so this is a follow-up item to a Council direction back at the March meeting to bring forward a draft ordinance based on key policy terms that were identified by Council and discussed at the last meeting. Tonight is a review of the draft ordinance. Is to obtain final direction. Is based determining if the ordinance is in a state where the Council feels is ready for formal introduction, or if there are further changes that Council wishes to be made to it. If the direction is to proceed towards adoption, schedule a public hearing. If there are no changes, it would be June 5th for the introduction and first reading, and then June 19th would be the consent calendar adoption. Since these ordinances have a 30-day waiting period, that would make it effective July 19th. Depending upon any changes directed by Council, or if Council desires more time to review, the adoption process may start later. So there have been multiple discussions regarding the unhoused, both at City Council meetings as well as the Unhoused Ad Hoc Committee. However, there are three that we want to bring attention to for Council meetings, specifically talk about unhoused, especially post-Boise decision. And so those items were heard by Council at the July 5th and September 12th, 2022 meeting, as well as March 20th, 2023. Topics include authorizing the Gilroy Police Department to enforce no camping under certain conditions, analyzing what other cities have been doing after Boise decision, and the discussion on draft policy points for location-based prohibitions on camping areas. The city, as just more information for the public, has approached the unhoused with a balanced approach, both looking at compassionate care for those experiencing homelessness, but also recognizing residents' desire to feel safe and have a healthy environment for the community. So the city has enacted programs and services towards both of those goals. So on this slide are composite listings of the different items contained in the written staff report. But we've provided services to the unhoused through housing measures, specifically Measure A project and the Pursuit of Safe Parking program, coordination with other agencies such as the Office of Supportive Housing and the City of Morgan Hill, as well as funding service providers that also provide services to the unhoused through our Community Development Block Grant Funds, Housing Trust Fund, and most recently our Permanent Local Housing Allocation. And then also quality of life officers connecting individuals and families to that assistance as they make their contact and outreach efforts to those experiencing homelessness. The city is also mitigating impacts to the community through garbage and refuse removal through both a contract for cleanup services, but also with a newly started community cleanup days and mobile garbage removal service in final development. And then finally addressing public safety issues as they arise from time to time with the quality of life officers, as well as other police and fire department resources. But tonight's item is about the draft ordinance regarding prohibitions in public rights-of-way for being used as sleeping or living accommodations. The key definition that we have is what a public right-of-way is. And basically that is a property that is owned, managed, maintained by, or property interest is held by the City of Gilroy. The ordinance only applies to ban in public rights-of-way. Private property is not subject to the ban, nor land owned by other agencies such as Valley Water, even if within the prohibition areas. The prohibition areas will discuss the areas generally, and then I'll pull up a map for council to review as we go through each one. So the ordinance actually identifies 9 different prohibition categories, but 3 of them are not location or fixed location based. Those include impeding passage per Americans with Disabilities Act, any city-issued permits for such as special events, and then portions of right-of-way use for motor vehicles. The remaining 6 we'll discuss in these slides. The first one is our parks. We've identified 28 sites. These are, under the ordinance, have a 500-foot prohibition area around each park. Based on council feedback from the previous policy points, we have made changes to the original language banning it so that there was concern under the previous language that we would be obstructing sleeping, lying, or sitting to those that want to just enjoy the park. And so there's a special call out for this in the ordinance that grants discretion to the city employer or the officer enforcing it to make a determination under their discretion about whether they are truly just enjoying the park or if they're there to actually use it as a living or sleeping accommodation. Additionally, another category is schools and daycares. We've identified 19 school sites, 22 known preschool and daycare locations in addition to those. Those also fall under the 500 feet prohibition area. Next is critical infrastructure. The scope has been decreased based on council feedback to simplify the ordinance. We had included hospitals, police, fire and ambulance stations, and some other locations. That's been dialed back to just open systems, specifically water wells, and infrastructure that's sensitive to impacts from the unhoused. So this is a 100-foot prohibition area around water wells, which as well identified have 12 sites, bridges, which we have 18, over and underpasses, which have 10, and then the railway. Entrances and exits and firefighting connections are also categories. We did not map those. Mainly they're too small and too numerous to map. The largest prohibition area is 10 feet in those categories, 5 feet for the fire connections. On to creeks. The city actually only owns 2 creek segments. It's a portion of Uvis Creek at the 152 crossing, or meeting at Birchall Road, and that proceeds to the southeast side of Christmas Hill Park. And then another portion, which is in the Miller Slough, that is only within the Los Animas Park property. All of the creek segments or sections are either Valley Water District land or private property with easements to either Valley Water or Santa Clara flood right-of-way. So these areas would not be enforced under this ordinance, only the city-owned portions as they qualify under the public right-of-way. So now I'm going to bring up the map. Let me do this here. So on the screen is the map that was included in the resolution. It is multicolored, and you can see we'll go through each one and what it represents, but we want to identify a few effects of these. So as I mentioned, the prohibition ordinance only affects public right-of-way. So even in some of these larger areas, it looks like it encompasses a lot of area, but it's only the public right-of-way within those bubbles. So to give you the perfect example and also to address creeks, as we zoom in, let's see here, down here. So this is the Uvis Creek portion that's owned by the city, running across the way here. As it exits the area around the just to the north. Sorry, this is confusing. To the north of the southeast side of Christmas Hill Park, it breaches out from city-owned creek, and then across it is the Valley Water District. So even though it's inside still the green area for a park prohibition and orange area for a school district prohibition, the ordinance would not apply to that section just because it's not public right-of-way. So that's just an example. All right. So let me turn off some of these and we talk about them specifically. So we'll start with parks, which are in the sections. So there's a few lesser-known parks that are in there, including along Uvis Creek. We actually have the Dennis DeBell Uvis Creek Park Preserve, which is a long stretch in here. And so that's why you have a significant coverage in this area, even though there's not an officially named park on the city's listing here. It's a park preserve, but so it qualifies. As well, we also have the Gilroy Gardens Family Theme Park addressed as well. It's not a city park because it's leased, but it is a recreational area. All right, next we have the schools. So the orange are the school locations, specifically the orange sites here. As I apply, the pink area is also the daycare centers. You'll notice that there's a lot of crossover. Some of the preschools are in here as well, and they're co-located with educational facilities as well. So those also apply the 500-foot boundary. So next is the wells. So there's the larger gray area. That is just to help identify. So these are the first of the 100-foot distance as far as the prohibition. So if I turn off the highlights, this is actually the area of effect of the wells, which is pretty minimal. So I have to zoom in. And so it's a much smaller profile with the 100 feet buffer zone around it, for lack of a better term. And we come to bridges. Again, there's city-owned bridges. But again, they're very, very small. Let's see if I can find one. So there's these light brown areas. But again, very small profile with 100 feet. All right. Under and overpasses are primarily along the 101 corridor and are in small sections and identified in purple in the map. And then finally, the railroad. It's just one segment that runs purely 100 feet around the railroad on each direction as it passes through.
Bryce, if I may ask,
Sure.
Just sort of the packet, but for the public, when you look at the sort of the ordinance and sort of where it applies to, it only applies to about 32% of the city, correct? So,
Correct.
And you look at the total number of individuals that it may affect, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at anywhere between 75 and 100. Is that?
Correct, sir.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect timing.
Sorry.
Perfect timing. So looking at the overall impact.
Just making sure.
Yeah, no, perfect. So we know that in working with the quality of life officers, we have an estimate of 75 to 100 people that we know would be impacted at this current point in time. These are individuals that are currently living along the city-owned portion of Uvis Creek. Outside of that area, the quality of life officers don't know of any known encamped individuals. They're both within a prohibited area and in the public right-of-way. So we have a lot of habitation occurring within creeks, but they're not city-owned creeks, so they wouldn't apply. So at this point, this is the anticipated impact. But we do want to put the caveat that the population is transient-based and could locate into an area in the future. But at this point in time, the estimate is 75 to 100. As you mentioned, we are looking at 31.6% of the city's area, which means that we have 68%, or over 68% of the city's area that is not included under this prohibition ordinance, which is obviously the majority of the city that will not apply.
But that includes private property, right?
That includes private property, correct. And so on to enforcement, upon adoption, the quality of life officers and community development will engage our local service providers group through their various contacts. The thought is to outreach during that 30-day period where the ordinance has been approved but not in effect yet, to connect those within the prohibited areas to agencies that provide housing, services, and supplies, and try to get them into housing. The intent is to provide a maximum amount of time possible for them to access services and to attempt to voluntarily comply with the ban. So alternatives, council may provide direction to proceed with ordinance introduction, or it may reject or modify the draft ordinance. There's no fiscal impact to adopting the ordinance. Enforcement will be carried out with existing staffing and fiscal resources. With that, council, our recommendation is to provide direction regarding the proposed ordinance, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bryce. Okay, council members, if you have questions, can you raise your hand on the screen or let me know if you don't know how to do it on the screen? Councilmember Bracco, did you? Okay.
Bryce, can you explain on the Uvis Creek how that's our local watershed and the Uvis reservoir feeds into that, the water soaks into the ground, and that's our drinking water?
Correct. So it's one of our waterways. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I think the visual is probably a best interaction. So the Uvis Creek is this long-running creek that runs through town. It comes from the north, pulling water through. It is a dirt-based creek, so there is infiltration into the water tables through it. Passes through town, and also then exits out again through out of the city and passes down through the region down to lower watersheds as it goes through. And I think it ultimately ends up into the Pajaro watershed.
Councilmember Armendariz.
If I could start with this question, our city wells are covered, aren't they? Like access to them, they're covered. They're in small buildings. They're secured.
There's buildings secured over it. There was concern about the region immediately next to it. There has been some samples that have been tested that have shown contaminants in the water table at the higher level. So there's concern on the water division, for lack of a term, to address some of that comfort. So it doesn't include like sewer lift stations or any of those. It's only the water wells and the water sampling wells.
So there has been found contaminants at those sites, those are testing sites?
Correct.
That you're talking about? And are they, my question is, are they secured? Are they protected? Like, why do we need to
I'd
double
have to
down
defer
on
to
protecting
Public
them?
Works on the specifics of the sites.
Most of our wells are housed and secure. However, infiltration can happen in the vicinity of those and get back down and into the well site. So there has been some human contaminants that we've found in one or two. So
Because of people breaking into them or
people
living around the,
people using the restroom next to the well sites.
next to the well sites?
Yes.
So the testing area was contaminated?
Correct.
Okay. Is that, so would the same happen if somebody, defecated outside of anywhere? There's a seeping into our water system?
It's more like the closer you are to the well, the more likely you'll get infiltration in the well. The further away, the less likely.
Daryl, you're speaking very softly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The closer you are to the well, the more likely it'll be contaminated. The further away, the less likely it'll be contaminated. So,
Because it's the test site?
Correct.
That particular site?
correct.
Thank
Okay.
you. That's my question.
Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. Bryce, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the ordinance here. And as you know, obviously this ordinance came about because the public asked for it, right? So, again, and you guys have done a great job really working with this. But one of the concerns I've heard from several residents, but sort of when I read the report, I didn't see the correlation, but several of the concerns I've heard from different individuals is this ordinance was going to be overly punitive to individuals, right? Where and it's my understanding that obviously the way it would work out, maybe it's a question for the chief here, is that if this does pass, and we do face an issue, that they would first be asked to move. And again, it's not somebody who's visiting the park or wherever it may be. It's someone who's actually camping out or sleeping over. So my question is, what's the process for if this goes through, for somebody who may be seen as, potentially, cited for this? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Makes sense, yes, sir. So I can address the first part, which is what the ordinance says. Right? Essentially, it's not criminalizing the act of being present.
Right.
Where the violation and the misdemeanor is if, let's say, a police officer asks an unhoused individual to relocate and they refuse to that order. That is where that is a possible citation. Beyond that, I have to defer to the chief of police to talk about any enforcement methods after that.
Yeah, because my understanding, it's going to be a case-by-case issue. Mm-hmm. And, again, it's not all or any. It's just case by case. But, Chief, maybe.
Yeah, the goal has, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor and Council. The goal is always to seek cooperation through education. Certainly we're going to be providing ample time to have folks move along from that violation area. Certainly if there's any crime in progress, that crime is occurring when the officers are there, then we'll address those immediately. Other than that, we'll work with the district attorney's office or supervising district attorney and try to mitigate case by case.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Hilton.
Hang on, Chief. I got a question. Sort of on the similar lines. So there's parts of this ordinance that I'm comfortable with and parts that I'm not. And I appreciate staff paying attention to the thing about the parks, right? Allowing those to be open to the public and not being so strict. But is it too subjective for your officers to determine whether it's, me and my wife and my dog bringing, picnic blankets and all that stuff to the park and maybe taking a nap or just playing around versus somebody who's dropping their kid off at a school? Let's use El Roble Park as an example. They are homeless. Their child is enrolled in El Roble Elementary. And they sleep in a car all night long, and they don't want to go back and sleep in their car, so they're going to go hang out at the park. Would it be okay for them to take a nap or to use the park? Like, where do you draw the line and say, you know what? Like, our park hours are actually, they end at 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. anyways. You can't be here. Like, where does that line get drawn? So we're not. I know you guys aren't into profiling people, so
I think
how do
it's
you?
more of a common sense approach. If someone's there with a tent and it appears that they've been staying there for just, a short period of time, which any park goer would be, then, it would lead the officer to believe that they're doing more than just hanging out there in the park. And so I think using that approach on a case-by-case basis and not, painting with a broad brush,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most effective way of doing it. And like I said, our quality of life officers, they familiarize themselves with a lot of the folks out there, particular encampments, segments of the encampment. And so they are aware who it has been there for a long term or not. And so, again, we seek their cooperation through education and then asking them.
Yeah, and I understand too that a lot of the officers, they would have personal knowledge of, those children that are homeless and going to school or in foster care and that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that. How does your staff feel comfortable that we have enough capacity to house those 75 or 100 people that we'll be removing from the creek if this goes forward?
Well, you said house?
Yeah.
That is, again, case by case and seeing what's available and working with our service providers and all the other folks in the community that they've partnered with and been successful in housing some folks. Certainly 75 is a good number.
Yeah.
And so that could be a challenge.
Okay. Thank you. My next question would be for Bryce. Thank you, Chief. So how have the discussions at all been with Valley Water or Caltrans? Because for years we've always shifted people and done sweeps, right? And like we sweep to them, they sweep to us, cost millions of dollars. Our homeless numbers have increased. We haven't gotten any better. Have there been any discussions with them that we are planning on basically doing a sweep of this area, of these individuals, and there's a possibility they could just cross the border into their district and camp out over there, and now it's their problem?
So we haven't had any specific conversations with them, just because it's early in the process. So and once we get firm with what council is wanting to proceed as far as are the creeks included or are they not included, proceeding that way, then that's when we would start having those kind of conversations. But again, it comes down to the fact that our ordinance is only applying to the public right-of-way. So could they relocate and disperse? They obviously they could. But the ideal is, the hope is that they would actually find services through the service providers and obtain housing or some other sheltering. But ultimately, we would notify them, but at this point, we have not done it yet.
Okay. And my final question would be to the city attorney. How comfortable do you feel, based on our conversations we've had over a long time now, on actually defending like what's in front of us, defending the city in regards to this ordinance?
To answer the question, Madam Mayor and members of the council, this ordinance represents what we believe to be the current state of the law about what is in fact defensible and what is and balancing the rights of individuals who may be in these situations, certainly through no fault of their own often, versus the rights of other members of the community who want to have a safe and secure public rights of way. There's been a lot of the kind of balancing line, if you will, has not been static. It has moved around, as you know, starting with the Boise case, going a little this way, a little that way. Where this ordinance comes out, we believe it is enforceable. It's always subject to potential court challenge, and that may occur in other cities as well. And for example, things about the definition that you, Councilmember Hilton, referred to in terms of the subjective test of someone camping in a park, that's the best language that anybody's using. And we can't guarantee it's perfect, but we believe it's enforceable.
Thank you.
And that to that, because I haven't spoken yet, that was council directed. You mentioned, Councilmember Hilton, that you were thanking staff for putting that in. That was directed by this council. I don't know if you were here at that meeting, but we were directing staff to make sure that we weren't blanketing parks from people to be able to sleep, lie, and use the park. So that was very, very specific and very intentional. Okay, Councilmember Armendariz, do you want to go another round before?
I do.
Since Councilmember Hilton had a lot.
Sorry.
Okay, and then I would
Yeah.
like to go to public comment, if that's okay with others, before we get, do you have a question too? Okay, I don't see you on here. Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
So I think this is a question for Bryce and the chief. 75 to 100 individuals who are located in Uvis Creek. And so this actually might be a question for ourselves. If those folks are in Uvis Creek, right? Those are where they're located. Those are the known encampments. Why are we overreaching the way that we are? Why are we skating on the line of imposing or impeding on the civil rights and the human rights of hundreds of residents of our community if these folks are concentrated in Uvis Creek? So
Is that not a question?
Part of my question.
That's not a question.
Yeah.
It's not a question. Okay.
I'm saying there's dozens of places that we're prohibiting human beings and residents of our community from being, but we're saying 75 to 100 individuals are only camped at Uvis Creek in the part that city owns. So I don't understand why so vast, why 30% of our community is being prohibited to folks. Why are we trying to violate their rights? That's what I'm
Okay,
asking.
Council, that's not a question for staff. Okay. May I go to public comment, or do you have another question?
I have more, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Let the public comment.
Okay, thank you, Bryce. Okay, so I'm going to go to public comment, opening public comment, and I see 12. Is that what you've got?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So that will be 2 minutes that you'll put on the clock per speaker?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and call them up. And please, when he calls your name, if you could please, or if you know you're speaking, if you could please just come to the front rows. It makes this a lot more efficient. Thank you.
The first four speakers are Herman Garcia, Robert Aguirre, Anne Marie McCauley, and Jan Bernstein-Chargan.
Okay, so someone's name was called first. You want to repeat it? Because nobody's going to the podium.
Herman Garcia.
Okay. Okay, and you should be able to see the clock in front of you.
Hello. Thank you for having me up here. My name is Herman Garcia, born and raised in Gilroy 75 years ago, and I've been working on environmental issues since I was 10 years old. 20 years ago, I founded a nonprofit called Cheer. I believe everybody in the community has seen Cheer around doing our work. I want to thank Councilman Dion Bracco and Carol Marks for your support and leadership, and our Mayor, Marie Blankley, in the work that we do. So I'm going to be throwing a bunch of numbers at you real quick, and also I want to acknowledge one of our homeless population, Paul Lombard, who a couple weeks ago, stand up, Paul, received a congressional resolution for the work that he has done with Cheer environmentally. Paul, this year, with other Cheer volunteers, has taken out over 250,000 pounds of garbage out of our watershed. Incredible. Anyway, so let me throw some numbers, and if you have any questions, just cut in on me. I mentioned the amount of garbage that we have taken out. Cheer covers 1,300 square miles of watershed, the Pajaro River watershed, taken in South County, Santa Clara, all of San Benito, Monterey, and Santa Cruz counties. Because of our partnership with the federal government, that area has increased to include over 2,000 square miles of watersheds that we work in and focus on. Okay, just in our watershed
Herman,
here in the Pajaro.
I have to interrupt you. The 2 minutes are up. I'm sorry. The time. I know everybody has 2 minutes. I was afraid of that. I wanted to interrupt you and say that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Thank
that's
you.
fine.
You can email everybody if there's something you didn't get to. All right. Next speaker.
Robert Aguirre.
Okay, Robert Aguirre again. I'm going to throw some numbers at you guys as well. The point-in-time count was concluded for the year of 2022, and we have numbers to compare it with from 2019. The number of unsheltered in the city of Gilroy went from 245 to 606. The number of sheltered people went from 359 to 208. Now, this is following the pandemic, so there were a lot of people that weren't going into shelters, so you got to consider that as well. But that was a total increase of 16%. combining both of those. The percentage of people, the greatest percentage of people, 24%, was people aged 51 to 60. The next was 41 to 50, and 16% for 61 and above. So these are people that tend to not be able to work. That's not counting disabled people, but just elderly. There was an 85% in Santa Clara County and 10% in California. The number of people that were became unhoused that were previously homeowners or renters was 42% in 2017 and 33% in 2022. 70% of these people had been unhoused for 1 year or more. Only 20% previously or had problems with alcohol and drugs. I ask that map there that shows places where people can't go, where can they go? Why don't we have a map that shows where people can go? I think that's one of the problems, is that we tell people you can't be here, you can't be there, you can't be over there, and there's nowhere to go. People need a place to go. People need a place to rest and sleep. Everyone needs to sleep. And even if you have a house or don't have a house, that doesn't change at all. So please, quality of life, whose life are we talking about?
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Anne Marie McCauley, followed by Jan Bernstein-Chargan.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It drives me nuts when I can't hear you guys. All right. I support the initial concern of prohibiting encampments 500 feet from schools and daycares. This was addressed immediately by the quality of life officers and community groups. I would like to address the actual logistics of clearing at least 75 to 100 people out of prohibited areas, specifically Uvis Creek, that are discrete from town and public view, and moving the unhoused people into the remaining 68% of town and residential areas. I read the packet and I understand the infrastructure concerns. I just want to clarify that if you vote to move these people into town, other infrastructure concerns will arise. The statement, adopting this ordinance will not have a financial impact on the city, is questionable. How can moving 100 unhoused people into town not have financial impact on our community? I understand there are no easy answers. I just want to be clear that before you vote in favor, you consider all the consequences, not just the unhoused, but businesses and neighborhoods. And I also want to say that if it was that easy to get 100 people housed, they wouldn't be there in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Jan Bernstein-Chargan.
Hello, and thank you, everybody. I would like to reiterate that the claim that 68% of the city after this ordinance will remain available to people is disingenuous at best. At best. Because if you look at the map, you see that what remains are residential neighborhoods, the business district, downtown, commercial areas, and, of course, the wastewater treatment plant, which nobody can get into because there's a big fence around it. So this actually will serve to drive people out of where they have tried to remain out of everybody's way, right, into neighborhoods that are currently not impacted, and where nobody's going to be comfortable sleeping out on the sidewalk. There is, this is not a fair law, because it only penalizes people. It only applies to places where people with no permanent housing go, right? Nobody else has a need to sleep under the bridge, right? You only do that if you don't have another permanent place to go. And just so you know, the Compassion Center and Pit Stop Outreach, we work every day to get people housed. Everybody who's out there, they've been surveyed, they are on lists, they want housing, and we're working to do it. And guess what? It's working. 150 this year. What we're doing is going to solve the problem without doing something like this, which is going to make the problem different, worse, and harm people. When we did the encampment sweep over at the 10th Street overpass 2 years ago, a woman died that night. cardiac arrest. 2 men wound up in the hospital, one with a stroke, one with cardiac arrest. The people who are out on the street are people with disabilities. They're seniors. They're people with chronic illnesses. Every move harms people.
Thank you.
So let's do no harm.
Next
Thank you.
speaker. Thank you. Next speaker.
Next 4 speakers are Joseph Robinson, TJ Napia, Linda Layton, followed by Michelle Nelson.
Thank you.
Hello, Council and Mayor. I'm actually startled at what an immoral document this is. I can't imagine working on this PowerPoint. It is disingenuous at best to talk about the 31% as some low percentage of Gilroy, when it obviously, doesn't include all the neighborhoods, including my own, where presumably these people will be coming through desperate and harmed again. And, we live by the Creek Preserve, and we enjoy it very much. My wife loves it. She takes pictures of it every day. And we're not afraid of we're not people who pretend to be afraid of homeless people or people who are desperate so that we can treat them badly and justify it, which is a new cultural dynamic. We are instead galled by the immoral examples set by the fact that this is attractive to this council and this mayor because it has no fiscal impact, because they don't want to make any investments to actually take care of a problem and show humanity and allow us to live in a moral community.
Next speaker.
TJ Napia.
Good evening, council members, mayor, and people here. With this ordinance, and I understand that the police chief had taken care of handling the police force, but here's where I'm going to ask you a question. That means if you have no sitting in a public area, whatever feetage is, that means you're going to need to remove every bench that is anywhere near a school, daycare, and public parks. You'll have to remove them because of this ordinance and the way you have it written. Also, if I know these people well enough, because they have a very high IQ, they will figure out a way to have everybody that is removed from these places, they'll be able to end up being downtown Gilroy. They will be out in the eyesores of everyone where they can be seen. And I know this. I know how smart they are. It's a whole different community out there. Also, there are some people who cannot go into a four-wall room. They cannot. My suggestion to you is find out why they're there. Some of us failed. That's all there is to it. But I'm glad you guys are trying to work at this, but this solution is not feasible.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Linda Layton.
Hi, my name is Linda Layton, and I'm new at this, so I'm very nervous. But I am one of those people who you call homeless. I am in one of the places that's outside of the creek area. I'm not there. We don't have the bridges. We don't have the sidewalks, the parks. We don't have all of that. So I am one of those people that also will be impacted by this. I had to move from the other side of town. And when I did this, the police, they say they handle each event as an individual event. And yes, they do. My motorhome was taken, which was my home, and I didn't even know that we're doing this, but within 15 days, it was at the recyclers. They recycled my home. They gave me an hour and 20 minutes to remove my things. I only have a small car. I was working. I fell at work, and I broke both my knees, so I'm on a limited disability of workers' comp. I'm having troubles. I'm trying to pick myself up, and the police at your door every day does not help. I'm afraid to go to work. I'm afraid to go anywhere because I'm afraid they're going to take. I had 2 motorhomes, okay? So I had 2. One was my closet, one what I lived in. But they were mine. They didn't belong to anybody else. They had no right to take it to the recyclers. They did not tell me they were going to do that. There was a lot more involved with that, but I don't believe that kicking everybody out of where we're at, if we're outside of that creek area, is the way to do it. Each person is an individual person and each individual situation. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, next speaker is
Michelle Nelson.
Michelle Nelson.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Nelson, and I've been a resident of Gilroy since 1981. And to say this is a complex issue is the understatement of all time. I don't pretend to understand the unhoused issue completely. I've never been in that situation. I have seen the change that has happened by the creek, though, and I am concerned about that, and that's why I'm with some reservation supporting this, maybe not the whole thing, but the part at least about the schools, of course, and the creek, because we need to protect our watershed. I have seen UVIS get denuded, and the wood has disappeared. There are more pathways, and as a former science teacher, I have an affinity for habitat preservation. That's where my interest is, and I haven't really enjoyed UVIS for the last couple of years. I've gone elsewhere. And it's not because I'm afraid of running into homeless people. It's just because the environment has changed so much, because the people have used it. And I think this is more of a balanced approach. I appreciate that you've done as much as you can to help unhoused people. But, yeah, we need to come up with a solution, but I just don't want to see the environment pay the price for people using it. This should be a habitat for our flora and fauna, and the preserve should be preserved. That's what UVIS Creek's all about. Yeah, I feel for the people who don't have housing, but I also feel for the environment and the harm that we're doing, and it will take a long time for it to recover. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have now a total of 13 speaker cards. So basically the last 5 so far will be Noemi Guzman, Wes White, Ron Kirkish, Tim Davis, followed by Araceli Vaquera.
Good evening. My name is Noemi Guzman. I'm with the Law Foundation. So I'm here really to just put some facts out for you all that I think are important for you to know and understand before you move forward with this ordinance. There's a long history of housing and zoning policies creating racial and socioeconomic segregation that has led to a disproportionate representation of people of color. Among the nation's homeless population, people of color constitute over 60% of the nation's homeless population, despite making up only a third of the general U.S. population. The criminalization of homelessness has a disparate effect on communities of color, LGBTQ+ persons, and persons with disabilities. Unhoused folks already face a ton of criminalization. Adding this ordinance is not going to help in this situation. Many courts have struck down laws that criminalize people for living outside. In 2019, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals determined that under the 8th Amendment, people experiencing homelessness cannot be criminally punished for sleeping outside if there is no shelter available. Some courts have found that homeless sweeps can violate an unhoused person's 4th and 14th Amendment rights. I think you all need to take this into consideration because Gilroy is already facing a lot of other issues, and unhoused folks is not where you need to start. You need to start at building affordable housing now.
Okay, the next speaker is Wes White. Right? Wes
yes,
White?
Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Director and actor. Hello, Wes White, Salinas Monterey County Homeless Union co-president. Want to pitch to you a little bit about the idea of Project Room Key and a little bit of how that came about. It was basically because of COVID. You know, everyone thought, oh my God, these poor people, these dirty people, these criminals, they're going to kill me. Keep them away from me. And that was actually one of the things for shelter in place. You see it, and that was one of the things that actually stopped in Salinas and Monterey County, because the whole point is, how are you going to get it to functional zero? Like they said, elderly, infirmed, people that can't work, those were the ones that ended up being the ones that got in. Our housing service director for Monterey County is Roxanne Wilson. She was the one who implemented a lot of that, and she did it basically on a bet. I bet you that if I house these people, the state will pay me back. And that was kind of how it worked, luckily. You know, I mean, the goal is to actually save lives. That's what I'm hoping is going to occur here in this ordinance. You know, you need to be team Y, not just team win, because there's a lot of people's lives hanging in the balance. Every time you get moved is post-traumatic stress right there. The city of Salinas, they did a sweep in the beginning of April. Under threat of arrest, don't come back. Okay, well, at the same time, you can't be on the median. They did that 5 times in a week, you know. So now you steal everything they got, and now they have to still rely on the public to, you know, accommodate and get through those moments. I mean, you steal everything from them. We'll give you food, we'll give you clothing, but if you can't afford the rent, we're taking it all back. And, you know, and you're not allowed to be anywhere, which is a boom for the law enforcement industry, which, you know, kind of goes back to school to prison pipeline. Where we just want to criminalize everyone and we make money off of people. If you can't give me money, I'm going to make money off of you. And, you know, we need to be more mature than that these days. There's plenty of money to go around. There's plenty of space on this planet. It's all stolen land to begin with by murderers. So, I mean, come on, let's get with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Ron Kirkish, yes?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and then Tim Davis.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, community. When looking at what Bryce told us and what Daryl told us and the chief, I'm in full support of this plan. Actually, I think it's a good start. There's probably other things that we'll have to do in the future, but it is a good start. As Herman said, during all the time that he's been cleaning the creek, 250,000 pounds he's drawn out of there.
Yeah, you're speaking very softly.
250,000 pounds he's pulled out of the creek. This is probably the first time I'm going to absolutely agree with Mrs. Nelson. Thank you. That it is a watershed that we need to protect for our own quality of life, our health, our water. And so I'm in full support of this. If anything needs to be done to aid and abet the homeless problem, it needs to come out of Sacramento, the governor's office. We won't be able to do it here. We have to look out for the best interests of our community and the people in our community. So, again, I'm in full support of this issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now Tim Davis.
Thank you very much. My name is Tim Davis. I'm the Executive Director at the South County Compassion Center. We have helped, along with other providers, 150 folks get into permanent housing since July 1st of last year. That has saved the city of Gilroy approximately $12.5 million based on the cost of about $83,000 per year per unhoused person. That's from a San Jose Mercury article last year. Housing First is working here, right here in Gilroy. It costs far less to house someone than to leave someone on the street. Many point to difficulties in other communities. However, right here in Gilroy, Housing First is working. Why then do we need to enact yet another policy that only addresses only the symptoms of homelessness and does nothing to address the core issue? This policy at best will continue sweeping the issue from one spot to another like someone blowing leaves into their neighbor's yard. At worst, it needlessly invites costly lawsuits. It costs resources, time, and money, endangers and worsens the condition of those who have lost their homes, and does nothing to actually solve the problem. Gilroy deserves better, a more thoughtful strategy that doesn't kick the can, but bravely says to our community that we're all in on eliminating this pandemic from our community. I know pretty much everyone on this council, and I know all of you care deeply about this community. So I'm recommending that you reject this proposal, go back to the table, and try to find something that actually benefits our full community, as well as those who are in housed and unhoused. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tim?
Do that?
Tim?
I don't. We don't do a back and forth, do we?
Okay, fine.
Go ahead.
It's on the agenda.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go,
It's on the agenda.
no, say Councilmember Bracco has a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, can you email us this data that shows the 150 people that have been housed and where they've been housed at?
I can't give you I can't give you names, but I'll give you summary data of how many people were housed in which city, and also a reference to the article that cites the 83,000. Is that what you're looking for? Yeah. Okay, sure.
All right, wait, I have a question also. Were these 150 people living as unhoused people in Gilroy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And we have one more, right?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Araceli Vaquera.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have anything prepared, but I've been listening, and the one thing that I didn't hear today was about the children and what the children are exposed to. And I don't want to criminalize every unhoused, because I know that you're not. And I really do feel for your situation. But I have young children, and we go to the park, and the parks should be used for baseball, for handball, to play in the park, to run. And sadly, you can't do all that and live in the park. We had a tent that was there last week, just 100 feet from the playground. Again, my heart does go out to the unhoused, but the children should not be exposed to that. I don't allow my children to go into my neighbor's backyard because I don't know my neighbors. So if somebody takes the time to, or because they don't have a choice, and I get that, are living in the park, I don't know who that person is. So I don't feel safe for my child to go into the park. So I know that there's a lot of work to be done, but right now it's the safety of my children, what my children are exposed to. I can't speak about the waterways or anything else. I'm just simply speaking about the parks and my children and what the environment that I want them to grow up in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are we concluded with speakers?
Yes, Madam Mayor. No
All
other
right.
speaker cards.
So closing public comment, coming back to council. Would council members each like to say something? Okay, I
cannot.
Okay, so council, you haven't spoken yet, Councilmember Mark, so go ahead.
All right. In fact, may I request a speaker to come back up, because I have a couple of questions for him. I really feel the whole issue is very important for us to have a good discussion before we vote and get all the information that we possibly can. And I think it's very good for the public to hear also.
I know, I don't, each speaker has 2 minutes, and if you're going to go into that, then it makes it uneven for everybody. So,
all right. Okay.
It doesn't mean you can't ask for data like Councilmember Bracco did.
This was going to be about data.
Okay, very good. Let's keep it to that then. And who is the person?
Herman.
Okay, Herman Garcia, can you please, if you don't mind, and respond to the data that Councilmember Marks would like to ask?
Would you please explain the danger to Uvis Creek or any of our creeks with people that are defecating and urinating and depositing chemicals into the creek?
She means with use of data.
The sole issue,
Data.
the sole issue is a public health and safety issue for cheer. And anytime you have homeless encampments, whether it be Uvis Creek, Coyote Creek, Guadalupe, Pajaro River, we address all those areas. Okay, it does impact the water supply. Okay, and it degrades it. Okay, you're drinking contaminated water anytime you have homeless encampments in the waterways because of the defecation. And as an example, okay,
Do we have data?
as an example, when we started improving the water quality here in 2006, keep in mind that date is significant because April 16th, 2006, the Pajaro River, its watershed, was America's most endangered, polluted river in the country. It's hard to imagine. But because of the efforts of Cheer, we have delisted it. We're no longer on the list, but our water quality with the work that we've been doing went from bad, polluted, to good, to very good. Because our focus were the steelhead trout.
I know.
This isn't data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand, guys. It's what I was afraid of, and so I'm going to stop. You're right. Stop it here. Thank you, Herman, for answering her question. But I thought she was going to be asking for something numerical. So okay.
I was.
Well, that wasn't the response.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Do you have any other comments?
I do. I think when people, I like to deal with facts, and I really hate when, sometimes hysteria plays into this. And when the fear of, well, people have to move from the creek, they're going to move to the sidewalks. Well, there is a law. Am I correct on that you cannot block the public right-of-way?
That's what this law would.
Okay.
Excuse me. That's what this law would say.
Mm-hmm. And the concern, because I really have talked a lot to Herman, and I have listened to all that he has to say about the creeks. And there is a problem with E. coli and bacteria in our waterways, and it seeps into the watershed, and this is what you're drinking. And every hot day, we have families and children that swim in Silva's Crossing. Those children are being exposed to all of that. And that really is a major concern because they shouldn't have to. And that is a preserve. And it's the amount of garbage. When you listen to 250,000 pounds that are being taken out, and every time they have a cleanup, they clean it up, and in a couple of weeks it's messed up again. That is an issue, is the garbage. The people have to be responsible who live there to clean their garbage. And not everybody does that in the creek or anywhere else in the city where they're living. Following up on what Araceli says, I will agree with her. It's really sad when you go to a Little League game and you hear the parents complaining to me about the needles that their children almost stepped on, that they found in the park. This is irresponsible behavior, and our children should not be exposed to all of this. It gets to the point where I feel for the unhoused. I really do. I feel for all of your stories. But you have to help yourselves, too, in meeting the city halfway in the cleaning up. And, you talk about civil rights, as one council member did, but I understand that. But where's the civil rights of all the rest of the citizens? There has to be a meeting of the minds here where everyone is working together. We want you housed. You talked about affordable housing. Affordable housing, yes, needs to be built, and we are trying. We are trying to build affordable housing. But we cannot dictate to a developer or to an owner of an apartment complex how much he or she is going to charge. And that's the stickler right there. Do you know that all the ADUs that are being promoted right now, they're going market rate? $3,000 in some cases for an ADU.
Okay.
Who can afford that? Anyway, okay. No, and we can't. Thank you. We cannot control
Try to rein everybody in here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Well, here. Okay. Next is, I see Councilmember Bracco.
Yes,
Is that
I have
right?
a question
Okay.
for the city administrator.
Okay.
A while back, we had damage done to the IOOF bridge, the bridge over Longhouse and Monterey. Do we know how much that cost the city to repair all that?
I don't have the cost of the repairs, but the cleanups themselves cost about $100,000.
Has the piers been repaired yet?
I don't know.
It's in the CIP project. I'm just kidding.
I couldn't tell you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
But it was, actually, it was at IOOF was a lot of damage to the bridge infrastructure that would not have otherwise been discovered had it not been for actually going in and cleaning out the encampment. Okay, Councilmember Armendariz is next.
Thank you. A couple things and then a statement. So regarding Councilmember Mark's question about sidewalks, the downtown sidewalks are wide enough to accommodate and still be compliant with ADA, unfortunately. So one of our public speakers speaking about folks being pushed from one end of town to the other, and eventually with an ordinance like this, if it's passed as is, it will corral people to be downtown where there are wide sidewalks, right, where it's not a restriction. The other thing is that regarding the speaker's comments and the question from Councilmember Marks, we live in a heavily agricultural, industrial community. The Pajaro River watershed is subjected to tons upon tons of pesticides, and there are Superfund sites within our Tri-County area because of that type of water pollution. So I think it's a stretch to blame or name those folks who live in our creeks and our water areas at that level. I grew up also hanging out at The Rock and at Silva's Crossing, and I know those substances, the pesticides and insecticides, are way more harmful to people than feces, unfortunately. But what I would like to say is that as council members, we're elected to respect and represent all of our residents, from the poor and the impoverished to the well-off and affluent, even when it makes us uncomfortable to have to walk in the shoes of another. I think that as a city, we all want, as a resident, we all want a city that looks beautiful and it feels safe for our elders, for our children, our most vulnerable, and everyone in between. The problem I see with this ordinance is that it is based on the assumption that the unhoused residents of our community are not our neighbors, are not equals, that they should not be allowed to interact with others, that they should not be seen and they should not be seen or be visible, that they are inherently criminal or they have criminal tendencies, solely based on their attempt to achieve their basic human needs, which is to sit, to sleep, to lie down, to find shade or shelter. I think what we need to do, instead of criminalizing them and attacking their rights as human beings and their civil rights, is to encourage and invest in ELI and low-income housing, to provide more supportive services, to provide realistic and substantive programs like safe parking, like tiny homes that are funded at the level that they need, not at the pittance that we threw at them. And we need to act with urgency and compassion, with real stakeholders, with real impacted people at the table making decisions and working on solutions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Hilton.
Bryce, I have a question. This was brought up earlier, and this was brought up in previous meetings. What tools are we providing staff to tell folks that where they can't be, where they can be? What we had talked about that, just not empowering our staff to not just shrug their shoulders and be like, you know what, I have no idea, but it just can't be here. And then they meet them at another park or somewhere else. So what tools are we providing the officers or city staff of where they can go, so we're not chasing as well?
So the direction we have in the ordinance is to identify the areas of the prohibition. So anywhere outside of those bubbles are not under the effect of the ordinance itself. At that point, it's as far as outreach, that would be during the 30-day period where we advise them these are the areas that are absolutely prohibited. But aside from that, there is no plan for any kind of additional other outreach at this point.
Sorry, Bryce, I can't hear you.
So sorry.
So is this like a map or something that the officers can hand to somebody physically,
yes.
right?
Yeah. So this is a map that's designed to educate both the unhoused as well as the house. It's to inform the entire policy. So that's why it's an attachment to the resolution or to the document, but also would be included as in the draft ordinance as maintained by the city and available for reviewing.
Okay, and will it also be in electronic format, so that way if the individual does have a device with them or whatever, they can actually look at what we were looking here and zoom in and actually see that? Is that available too?
Not at this point, but it will be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Bryce, just to piggyback on that, and then Councilmember Tovar, the map is of the city limit, right? Our jurisdiction ends at the city limit line. Gilroy is surrounded by county land. So I just want to clarify that all we can do is draw the line at the city limit and the areas within the city limits that, right, the 30% within the city limits that are affecting children and public safety. Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's here tonight. Obviously, as you can tell, this is a topic that we all truly care about, And yes, there's a lot more that we can do, obviously. I mean, in treating everybody equally and fairly. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is an ordinance that was brought together originally by the community. So I think we're working this through and trying to find the right sort of methods to use. And just, Jimmy, maybe this is a question or comment to you. In the report, obviously, when we didn't talk a lot about what was in the report, there's 12 different sort of items that we've either performed or we're providing for the unhoused. And just sort of looking at that list, which is a good list. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can do, obviously. But, Jimmy, I'm hoping that, no matter how this sort of ends up, is that maybe off that list that we were provided, if you can provide us with a monthly update during your reports in regards to sort of what is being done, to assist our unhoused population in more of a comprehensive manner. So again, it's listed here, but it doesn't go into detail about what we're doing. I think the community should know that we're not just sitting on our hands. We're doing what we can, but there's so much more that we can do, obviously. But I think what we have here, those are good projects. It's good work that we're doing, and I think we need to showcase that a little bit more. So if you can, Jimmy, if you can provide that for us during your monthly reports. But again, I think that there's so much more that we can do, but we are doing what we can. And the comments about providing more low-income, affordable housing, believe me, every one of us up here would like to see that happen. We have that discussion over and over and over again. But again, I'll be the first to admit there's a lot more that we can do. But again, we have to think about the entire community. We have to think about everybody. And so when you look at that, yes, I don't know if this is, the ultimate sort of a goal, but I think it's a start, and that's where I'll support it. Thank you.
Okay. Do you need?
Thank you, Mr. Tovar. Any direction for a monthly report, I would certainly take from the entire council. So if the council wishes to give me that direction, I would follow that.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Klein. I have my own call. Go ahead, Councilmember Klein. You haven't gone.
Well, I know coming to this, it's new for me as far as this process, being newly elected and everything. And this is a very difficult issue, and just trying to understand. I had a question. How is this current process tracked with the interactions between the QQL officers and the rest of the force and Gilroy Fire Department and their engagements with the unhoused, to know what the repeat incidents are, time spent, final deposition, resolution, et cetera? What goes on right now in all those interactions, so I can understand why we're trending this way? Understand?
If I understand your question correctly, we want to figure out how we track the interactions?
Yeah, I mean, in all your interactions right now, what is that?
So we have clearing codes that we utilize whenever an officer is either self-initiated contact or is responding to a complaint or he's even responding to a phone call or email. And so they conclude that interaction, they'll clear it with QOL, which means it had some sort of nexus to that particular concern.
Okay.
Yeah. And as far as any other metrics with the service providers or the nonprofits, certainly that's out of our realm of gathering that data, but, I'm sure that could be available somehow.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Do you have something else to say?
Well, no, I just want to go back to what my recommendation. Apparently, the city manager needs direction from all of us in regards to coming back during his monthly reports.
I'm not ready to, I don't wish to support that here, Fred. That's a big.
It's not part of the ordinance, and it's not part of an agenda item.
Right.
It's just asking him to include that in his monthly report. So, I mean.
Okay, so maybe we'll talk about that offline, or do you want to say something else back to him? I don't know how to respond to that. I'm trying to deal with this particular issue right now. So I think that's going to come down to either agendizing it or I don't know how to respond to that. My brain is on all the comments I'm trying to make on this item, and you're taking me somewhere else, and I would like to.
I'll ask it to be on the next.
Okay. It's like, sorry.
No, I just thought it was important enough to include.
Okay. Councilmember Armendariz, you're on again, or did you?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up to what the chief.
Go ahead, then.
Tom's a question for the chief? Regarding in the report, Chief, regarding the QOL officers, how would you guesstimate the amount of interactions from our officers with the unhoused members of our community receiving QOL codes versus being cited or, having a move it or lose it conversation, enforcing a law versus referring to a service?
Those metrics are available. We have the number of contacts, what resulted in a citation, what resulted in a resource. And so, certainly all the contacts are not enforcement per se contacts where someone is criminally cited or issued citation. Mm-hmm. And so, again, their purpose is not to go out there and arrest everyone per se. It's
right.
to try to make a difference and be a resource. And certainly, at the end of the day, like I've said before, we're police officers. And if a crime is being committed, then we're going to address it.
Have you seen a trend either way recently?
Well, a good indicator is they've been out on the street for a little over a year and a half, and I've received 0 complaints. So that tells me that they're doing something right. And so, just like anything else, where we could adjust, we adjust, and if we could be doing something better, we'll do it better. And it's a pilot program.
Oh. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. So I'm going to try my hat at this. This item has come before us because of so many over the calendar that we all saw on the staff report of time of businesses, of parents at schools, of daycare facility operators, and then in what staff has discovered in going out and clearing encampments in those areas that have been of very, very, very grave concern. So this is an attempt to strike a balance. This isn't trying to do something that doesn't need something done to it. It's because we have a responsibility to the children of our community as well, and to safeguard the infrastructure that supports our bridges and creeks, and we have a responsibility and a duty to look out for those things as well. We are, I believe, this council laser focused on housing. There has not, I've been on this council since 2018, and there hasn't been a housing development that this council has said no or discouraged. The one that VTA was proposing on the transit center was the one that I brought to the council because that was going to be instead of transit. And what we did instead was fight very hard, and we got the county's land at 8th and Alexander to build a 100% affordable housing project that includes extremely low income housing, whereas the one that VTA was proposing included an awful lot of market rate housing. So we are doing everything we can to promote housing to make sure that it's accessible. We can't do anything about builders having to pencil it out. We got Measure A dollars because all of us in Santa Clara County voted for that to help. That is what's funding the project on 8th and Alexander. We are elected to enforce our city charter. That is our primary elective duty, is enforcing the charter. And the charter tells us that we need to fund essential city services first, which are our police and our fire and our parks and our streets and our storm drains and our sewer and all the things that the people expect our dollars to go to. City Administrator and I, Jimmy Forbes, have gone to multiple sites that are supposed to be for temporary housing, places where unhoused can be. But in order to be there, there needs to be some level of monitoring and services. And the sites that we saw are at a price tag of $42,000 per person. So it comes with a management. It's not just about saying, go here. You can't just do that. You have to provide the service that's there. Same with emergency shelters. It's not about having a building vacant. It's about having the management, the people there to run it. So this effort here is not about emergency shelters. It's trying to protect the public's rights from all of the issues that have existed that are real. I wish the parents of the students, because there were over 100 emails that we got, with lots of different things, I don't want to go into them, that children face, not just at parks but at their schools, and one large daycare in particular on Monterey that continues to have problems day in and day out, and it's very difficult to help them navigate that because there's not much we can do unless we enact some kind of ordinance like this. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's about balance. It's about respecting our city charter first. The jurisdiction of the city is what we get dollars for. The county gets dollars for social services. The state gets dollars for mental health institutions. So you have to know what your money sources are in order to be able to use them. And if you don't, then you ought to be going to the voters to ask for money to be spent differently. Otherwise, we have an obligation to address the city charter first. So with that, I would like to suggest that we do this is not a motion item, but given all the comments we've had, I'm prepared to ask the council if we're ready to give direction based on what staff has brought back, which to me is exactly as council directed. Okay? Seeing head nod. Mr. Klein? Okay, so I see a council majority. It looks like, if I need to name, that Councilmember Hilton and Councilmember Armendariz are dissenting the direction. Is that correct?
No, it just means that I'm not ready to provide any new direction. I felt like I provided direction, and I'll look and see what happens on the ordinance that comes back.
Okay. So then we have so the direction is to proceed with as suggested by council. Okay, that brings us then to agenda item 11.1, which is report on design updates for the Gourmet Alley and Railroad pedestrian and bicycle beautification improvement projects. And this is for Daryl.
Okay. Good evening again, Madam Mayor, Council. Have a fun topic for you here tonight, the Gourmet Alley and Railroad Alleys project. Hopefully you had a chance to peruse a little bit of the displays we have here while you came in tonight. And I do notice that there's a few people here in the audience who has participated in some of our outreach projects as well. I'm glad they're here tonight. Tonight I'd like to update you on the progress of the Gourmet Alley and Railroad Beautification Grant. As you may recall, we received a $3.9 million grant in March of 22 from the California Department of Transportation. The design before you tonight incorporates comments and collaboration of local residents and business owners. We see this as the first step or the kickoff of the beautification project that may lead to future enhancements of art and community programming with our downtown community. We are currently on schedule to review the 95% design plans at the end of the month and send out to bid this summer for your approval. And for tonight's presentation, I'd like to introduce our lead consultant from CSG, Hal Williams, behind me here, and our professional landscape architect, Paul Dillingham. We'll start with Hal and switch to Paul during the presentation and answer any questions at the end. Thank you. Hal?
Good evening, everyone. I am Hal Williams. I'm with CSG. I am a civil engineer. I am the project manager on the design team. So the idea here today is to kind of give you an overall update about the grant, what it covers, what it doesn't, a little bit of history about the process of how we got from where we started to where we are right now. So we'll get into the project background first and the design process, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's possible in the future. So the money that's for this project came from the California Clean California grant. And the purpose of that money is to beautify and improve local streets and roads, parks, pathways, and transit centers to clean and enhance public spaces. So the state does consider essentially alleys falling under the purview of this. The specific award was for $3.9 million in design and construction funding to basically provide litter abatement and renovate railroad and gourmet alleys for pedestrian-friendly access. You're going to hear us talk mostly today about Gourmet Alley rather than Railroad, just because, well, we'll get into that a little bit. So in terms of items that are included in the grant application or are covered by the grant, decorative and non-decorative surfacing, driveways, sidewalks, ADA ramps, storm drain improvements, new signs, trees and landscaping, new fencing, area lights, benches, trash receptacles, common trash collection areas for downtown businesses. Some items of note that are not covered by the grant, art installations, murals of any type, anything essentially out of what was listed on the previous slide is essentially not covered. In somewhat rare of a case, Caltrans is giving us a lot of latitude with the things that are covered, with not a lot of oversight. But the things that are not covered are not covered. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind as we talk about future opportunities. So in general, our design objectives were to take all of that, beautify the public space, improve public spaces for walking and recreation, support the local businesses in the area, improve safety and visibility, and to encourage placemaking within Gourmet Alley. Just a little overview of the existing conditions. This is a very zoomed out plan view of what's going on out there. I'll talk about Railroad Alley first, which is towards the bottom there. In general, it's bound on the east side by the actual railway, and then on the west side, it is by, essentially it's the back side of a number of businesses out there. So the alley itself serves mostly as a vehicular access, north-south, to designated parking or to make deliveries to those businesses there. And as far as garbage collection goes, essentially each business has their own dumpster that lines the alley. In terms of the future improvements, we're actually going to essentially just resurface it and maintain that because this one's more vehicular focused. Gourmet Alley itself has a lot more varied use around it. It has vehicular access both as sort of a one-way through, though in some places it actually operates two-way because it serves as a drive aisle for the existing lots between 4th and 5th and 5th and 6th. Garbage collection works pretty similarly. Everyone has their dumpsters in the alley. Recology comes to the alley, picks up the dumpsters. So our task here is, especially for Gourmet Alley, is to make it more pedestrian friendly and do what we can to reduce vehicular use through the alley. I won't get into all of the details of how we're doing that right now, but that's essentially the framework of what's existing and what we're trying to do. We did have public outreach back in November of 22, and some of the key, we got a bunch of input from all kinds of folks, but some of the key bits of input we got here were planned, since we can't really include our art here and now, plan for future amenities and art. Number 2, we initially entirely prohibited vehicular access, but what we were asked to do was, can we be a little more flexible to accommodate deliveries for the businesses out there? These are a lot more, food-based, things like that. We want to make sure that they can get that. So we have modified what we're doing to allow for some, it wouldn't be open to vehicles all the time in general, but we would have some windows where deliveries would be possible. Emphasize flexibility and movable furnishings. Paul will get into that part a bit more. Actually, all the rest of the items there. They wanted, the public preferred, because we can't underground the existing utilities, to focus on overhead lights and canopies and also have shade structures to kind of visually block what's going on there. So to get more into the specifics of the design project, I'll talk about kind of where we started specifically for Gourmet, and then Paul can kind of pick up to where we ended up from there. So our original option 1 essentially included undergrounding of the existing PG&E power lines and sort of a theoretical thought experiment of what if we could pay for anything we wanted? What would it look like? That's where we started, but you end up with essentially an estimated cost of around $5.5 million, whereas this grant gives us about 3.2 for actual construction. So right off top, we said, okay, this is what we want to do, but we obviously can't afford to do it just using grant money. Undergrounding, while theoretically possible, and we did try to capture it in the estimate, it was something we wanted to note that we may hit things in the alley during undergrounding that we didn't necessarily know were there, so even our estimate might be a little bit low, but we got as far as we could get with the information we had without actually potholing the street. But even if We did say have cities, Rule 28 credits, which have to do with undergrounding of PG&E. Even if the money were available, their review process is pretty lengthy. The fact of the matter is we would not be able to actually meet the required deadlines of the grant. The grant requires this actually be open to the public by April of 24. So
April.
Just PG&E review would pretty much go beyond that end date. Wow. So that's where we started. This is sort of why we had to stop that there. Then we had to start to pare things down to what's actually feasible in terms of the budget that we have. So after that, I'll hand it off to Paul for him to cover.
Could I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want it to be clear to everybody. So the end date of this project that needs to be completed is, you said, April of 2024.
Correct.
Right? Okay, so please explain to me, if it's not completed, by that time, what happens?
Essentially, Caltrans would not reimburse the city for the money that was spent.
Right. And so can I get a guarantee that it's going to be completed and not
Okay, Fred,
shortcut?
council member. We understand, you can't get a guarantee from somebody at the podium.
Well,
okay.
we can get a
It's
guarantee that we
but
can use our
I will
money.
let you know that the grant does say that actually has to be open to the public in April, has to be completed by June.
So like the
and
parking
and
lot,
that's
it's
not
open, but
for
it's not
our
completed.
consultant staff. That's a problem within here. Okay, it's grant money. We are required to have it completed by June of 2024.
I thought it was April.
No,
So
open to the public in April, completed in June.
All right.
yes.
So, all right, well, I'm not.
There's a distinction in terms of how Caltrans actually defines this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Paul Dillingham. Mayor and council, I'm Paul Dillingham, landscape architect working with Howell Williams and CSG. And
I know. Everybody's soft-spoken tonight. I know. I don't know why it is so short.
Sorry about that. Paul Dillingham.
Okay.
I can speak up. I'm Paul Dillingham, landscape architect with
Guys?
working with CSG. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to piggyback off of the previous slide, the cost issues. We started our design aspect of looking at the programming and design of Gourmet Alley by looking at the project goals that Hal just reviewed and the objectives, and thought about what would be the best use of materials and space. And when those figures were also, along with the overhead line issue, pushing the costs higher, we regressed back to what are the core goals and objectives, and how can we scale the materials back in a way that meets those objectives. So a bit of value engineering. On this slide, we're discussing some items that we considered as we moved through option 2. Gateway entry arches was a big cost item. We decided to scale back. That could be a future item for future projects, for example. The amount of furniture, the type of pavement materials, these are all items that we looked at to try to meet the grant objectives and stay within the grant budget. Which just brings us to the proposed design, back to those core goals. And meeting some of those core goals is the grading and accessibility, the lighting, the furnishings, moving the trash dumpsters out of the alley to free up the space within Gourmet Alley, and shade in various forms. Here's a slide with some of the pictures of some of the materials we're proposing. You have the decorative pavement. You have multiple types of lighting, pole lighting, string lighting, types of fixed furnitures. And here's an example of a small tree that will provide shade within the alley. This is a slide to talk a little bit about the design process, what we thought about in terms of Gourmet Alley historically as a utilitarian space, back of house activities,
deliveries, garbage, and it's still going to be having those utilitarian spaces, but in addition, it will have flexible and creative use. And so it has a real differentiation from Monterey Road right next to it, and that led us to really look at how do you emphasize creative, flexible use and utilitarian space. And so we latched onto materials that have a somewhat industrial look. Not industrial in the sense of, I should emphasize, it's a clean, well-lit space. That word can be taken the wrong way sometimes. A few more images of materials bring in some movement, some color, some wildlife, a change of pace from what you have inside some of those businesses. And one picture here of an alternative shade. We're proposing shade sail canopies at 2 locations within Gourmet Alley. This is just to show roughly the scale of what those would look like. It would be slightly different colors. And then we have 3 slides here to talk a little bit about the program. We're looking at providing flexibility. So we're going to highlight the 3 main programs that we heard would be useful. The first is just that first goal we had, which was walking and recreation. An alternative to Monterey Road, we call it the promenade option. It's clean, it's well lit, it's repaved, improved drainage, and you have more shade and more lighting and occasional places to sit. The photos in the upper corner are just to give a sense of how these spaces would feel. They're all at a similar scale to Gourmet Alley. The second program, what we call the plaza nodes, would be near restaurants and bars that are either there or are proposed. Several restaurants and bars are either under construction or proposed in this area. And this is to provide areas with permanent seating in the public right-of-way to build off of what the merchants are building within their, or may build within their own patio space, providing some inspiration, some synergy. Here's an example where a shade structure would be overhead in the lower right section drawing. And the third program is also about the eating, the gourmet part of Gourmet Alley, but emphasizing the flexibility, the open space that could be used with movable furniture, movable tables and chairs. They could be locked up at night. And that also provides flexibility on weekends, summers, evenings. It could be used as market space, really up to the inspiration and imagination of the merchants and the downtown community. We have pictures of 2 of the spaces to give you a sense of what we're thinking. This is between 4th and 5th Street. The public parking lot is on the right. You can see here's a very nice brick building. There's about 4 or 5 businesses here which are under construction every time I go down there. So it's a great opportunity. It should be very nice. And you can see the community has already painted this portion of the alley as a temporary measure. And in the very far background, there's some string lights. And so we produced an illustration of what that scale of space might look like with permanent furnishings and overhead lights, and how people might use it on a weekend, an afternoon. You can see in the parking lot, we're suggesting that the renovated parking lot can also be used as a flexible space during the summer as needed. In the middle, you'll see a small enclosure. A key part of the project is building several trash enclosures to move all of the dumpsters out of the alley itself. So that's showing roughly the scale, how it would divide the parking lot from the alley. And in the background, you can see a shade structure and string lights. And here's a sense of how those lights might look at night. The second location is between 5th and 6th Street. Here we have the existing Paseo alley, the Garlic City Cafe, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Gilroy Dispatch. And here we see, by adding more greenery, young trees to take over once the camphor trees grow out and die out, and light poles and furnishings, how the space might feel, how it might be used. And again, at night, you can see what that might be like. On the right, again, you can see a trash enclosure. And finally, we wanted to mention some of the items that we thought about as we went through the process, as we spoke with the public about the future, that we see this as step one. There's been a lot of energy and enthusiasm about improvements to the alley, but as Hal said, the grant is very specific about what we're addressing, and the timeline's very short. These are issues people talked about. Once those trash enclosures are in, once new businesses come in, this trash strategy can be reevaluated. Crosswalks can be considered between segments of the alley. Merchants may be encouraged to improve their rear building facade onto Gourmet Alley. Weekend programming and festivals goes back to that idea of flexibility, and everybody wants to think about art, whether that's in public or private areas, what that could look like. And finally, as Hal said, utility work is always on people's minds.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton, can you please put your phone away?
Take this one.
Please. It's been going on for the last 10 minutes. You can use that
this one now. Okay. No worries. This was just kind of an overall timeline. We referenced it earlier, but we didn't have it up on the screens. It was just kind of to give you an idea of where we started and where we are. The grant was awarded last March. Here we are now, May 23, which is essentially 95% design. Final design's due in August. So then the idea is you advertise construction, and it's open to the public in June 24. And then, in April 24 with completion by the end of June 24. So we just wanted to put that as a visual so that everybody had it for reference.
Okay, are you ready for questions?
Yes, that was it, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Bracco.
So, see on your construction starts in November? It's winter.
That is correct. In order for this to meet the deadline that has been set, that's when it actually does have to start.
Daryl, how come we haven't done this since March of 2022 we've had, and we're just barely doing it now?
Well, it's taken time to get the project put together as well as the design. So the design is at 95% now, so we're hoping to get that out as soon as possible. You're right, there are going to be challenges during the winter months. That's always our challenge. So we have to do the best we can with what windows we have as far as construction capabilities are.
Are we going to be working on both alleys at the same time to speed up the process?
We will do working at both ends, both sides, every side we can. Yes, parking lots and everything. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Do we already have a contractor in mind? I mean, this
No,
is the design, right?
This is the design. Yeah, we're going out to bid here, like you just mentioned. So.
Right. So going out to bid. So we have to. That has to come back
Exactly.
in order to start in November.
Correct.
Or sooner. Okay. I don't see any other council members, so I have one more question. No, go ahead. I'll wait. It's not showing on my screen. I want to ask about the surf on the ground. What's the material planning for the pavement, for the floor? I know, but if you could say it again.
We looked initially at several materials. Again, due to cost issues, we're proposing decorative forms of asphalt.
Okay. So is there a way, asphalt would just go on top of what's there? Would you have to dig out any of the concrete that's there?
It would be complete.
Yes. So in general, the finished surface is going to be about where the existing one is.
Okay. So if you're going to dig out the concrete that's there, can you or are you already planning to put some kind of conduit down that PG&E wires could, at some later date, be put through?
So what we're doing right now in terms of that design actually is we have an alternate bid item to put in the trench for future conduit. So it's a little complicated with PG&E because you can put that in.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, of course.
But I just wonder,
Yes.
my question is basically, are we building this such that we still have the opportunity to underground or at least put near the surface?
The design includes an add-alt for that.
Okay.
And then PG&E would have to accept it at a later date.
Right, which if we waited for them, we would never meet the deadline. So I get it.
Correct. The blank conduit will be in the ground for future dates. Yes.
Okay, that's the answer. Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you. Can I, Daryl, I have a question for you, but I want to ask the gentleman a question. Going back to the trash strategies that you have listed on there, can you go back to that design And I'm just trying to get an idea of what your vision is, what that looks like. Because the reason why I asked that, obviously, is you want something that's presentable and it's not going to leave a smell, right? I mean, if it's open. Have you guys looked into the Big Belly solar-powered smart bins? You know what those are?
I'm familiar with what those are. That's more addressing civic use, like you have out here in front of the library, small bins. We have not proposed that for this area. What we're talking about with trash here is a different issue. This is removal of commercial 3-yard dumpsters that are collected twice a week, once a week, to make, for 2 reasons. One is to clean up the alley, and 2 is to remove the need for a garbage truck to go down the alley, and by pulling those into the parking lot. The Big Belly is a great product because it reduces need. I think I'm not super familiar, but I think it's a normal city sidewalk trash can that has a compactor in it, and I think it then reduces the need for city staff to come every day, every 2 days.
It sends a signal to the collector to pick up garbage.
Right, and I think they were probably an innovator, and now I think a lot of people make something similar that makes it less maintenance work.
Right.
I don't think it's the right solution here because of the type of program that we were instructed to look at.
Okay. Darryl, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to my initial rant, and thank you to Councilmember Bracco for asking that question. If we're starting construction in November and we're taking in consideration sort of delays, weather, whatever it may be, again, the question goes back to if we're not done by April 2024, what happens and who's responsible for that?
Right. It is a very aggressive program. They gave us little to no time to get this done with the grant that they provided, so we're trying to work within their parameters they gave us. If we don't finish within that time, we will have to go back to Caltrans and speak with them about that. But our whole intent is to try to meet that date as best we can.
Okay. But if we don't meet that date, we stop construction.
Well, Councilmember, I don't think that's I don't think that's an appropriate
Well,
question.
it is an appropriate question.
No, because
if this project doesn't get done, what's going to happen?
That means the city either has to pay for it ourselves. We don't get reimbursed.
The city will have to pay for this.
We'll have to pay for
we
whatever the portion is.
We delayed this project, and now the city's liable possibly for.
But no one's saying it's going. You're projecting, and you're angry at something that hasn't happened.
It's not uncommon to ask Caltrans for an extension due to weather or situations that we have no power over. So that happens on their projects that they work on our highway every day. So,
and to finish and to answer the mayor's or to respond to the mayor's comment, I'm not angry about it. I just want to see this project get done.
We all do. Believe me, we all do. Okay. All right. Any other questions from council? Okay. Oh, it's not on. Why is that? How come I don't? It's not on mine. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, Councilmember Hilton.
Thanks. I just want to ask or provide a recommendation, but ask what you're going to do with the bike racks that were planned in there, and just to make sure that they're at least surface mounted, right, and not cast inside the concrete. Where if you have to remove them, or you find the flexibility right of those different areas, or you find that there's more cyclists that go to like cafes and breweries and stuff, that you can build like a corral over there, but actually be able to move them, right, and not have them in there, so we have to dig up the concrete and then take them out. Just want to make sure that's a common practice that you all normally recommend.
Thank you. That's a good comment. It's a lot of the projects we work on are more established locations, like a park renovation or street renovation, and so those are more fixed. But because of the nature of Gourmet Alley, I think that's a very good point you make.
Yeah, and those are the current ones that we normally put in, or that we recommend as a city too, the inverted U, surface mount. They have a security bolt on there, so nobody can just go there and take them off either. So thank you.
Councilmember Marks.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm going to go back to the timeline just for a second. Did I understand you correctly to say that the railroad side is not designed yet?
Oh, no, we've designed railroad as well.
Oh, okay.
We're just simply doing much simpler improvements there.
All right.
Early in the process, we had to decide how to split the money up. And so the improvements to railroad, it's still a 95% as well. They're just simpler improvements.
Okay. So, Darryl, then when will this go out to bid?
Well, we'll be looking at the plans, like I said, in 2 weeks, 95% with our final comments, which would put us at a procurement date in, you said June?
We're supposed to give you the bid set end of June, so
You're basically going out to bid or advertising in August, right?
July to August. We're going to push that even. I'm going to push my consultant to get that quicker as well. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
you have to hope that the construction company's ready to start in November.
That's right.
With umbrellas. All right, thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have one speaker card, and it's David Liel.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. We are on public comment now for agenda item 11.1.
Good evening. First, I want to say thank you to everyone up there for getting the lights on the trees approved, and so that got installed the last couple of weeks, so that's a good thing for everyone. Next thing, just regarding the Gourmet Alley, I know that sounds like they're not going to, or maybe not yet, doing anything with the underground, the sewer and stuff. Is that correct? Like the sewer lines, are you guys going to repair any sewer lines? You are, okay. Because I know in some of the buildings that people have, they have issues with the sewer, and then I'm worried about if there's tractors on there, vibration, so forth, it's going to make it worse, and then down the line they will have issues. So I guess that's the main thing, making sure that the sewer is addressed that connect to those alleys. That's it.
All right, thank you. Any other public comments?
No other speaker cards, Madam Mayor.
Okay, closing public comment. Council, this is receive report. Are we good? Okay, we are good.
Thank you.
Whew, moving on to 11.2, probably the most fun one of the evening. Okay, the approval of a 2-year agreement with SV Creates for an amount of not to exceed $50,000 for funding the Elevate Gilroy Through the Arts program. Bryce, you want to give us this report?
Yes, Mayor and Council.
Okay.
This agreement, we received a submittal proposal from SV Creates, or Silicon Valley Creates, requesting $50,000 over 2 years for the Elevate Gilroy Through the Arts program. The proposal is to combine the city funding with the Rain and Packard Foundation funding to provide grants ranging from $5,000 to $20,000 to fund visible, publicly accessible arts projects in downtown Gilroy. Artists and organizations desiring the funds funds for those projects must apply to the program that would be managed by SV Creates. SV Creates has stated that the city's contribution can help leverage additional grant and private donation contributions. The process that SV Creates has identified for their process is to submit an intent to apply or project concept, basically providing brief answers to questions about their project idea with SV Creates. They would then work with the project proposals to develop basically a final proposal that would go to a review committee of local artists and leaders to identify the final funding selection. So as far as reporting and accountability for these funds, any art to be displayed or performed in public areas must be approved by the Arts and Culture Commission per public art policy. There's a determination still to be made if this will happen before the final review or if it will happen after the selection is made but before award. So that's something we'll have to work with SV Creates in the final process. SV Creates must provide an annual reporting with the first annual report at the completion of the first year, so June 2024 to City Council. They must provide that report before receiving the second year of funding. As for alternatives, Council may, of course, reject the draft agreement or may modify the amount or terms of the agreement. The fiscal impact as proposed is $50,000 for 2 years, $25,000 from the existing appropriations in this fiscal year, and then the $25,000 that, if approved, will be included in the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. Our recommendation is for Council to approve the agreement with SV Creates, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Bryce. All right, council members? No questions? No. Okay, opening public comment.
No speaker cards, Madam Mayor.
Okay, closing public comment. I just want to acknowledge Connie Martinez, who's in the audience there, as well as Alexandra. She is responsible for bringing SV Creates to Gilroy and for getting this item on our agenda. She's been working with Jimmy to figure out how we could participate. So what I would like to point out is that this money that we are talking about is to fund grants ranging from $5,000 to $20,000, as you said in your report, and that eligible artists are can be from San Martin, Morgan Hill, Hollister, and San Juan Bautista.
And Gilroy.
Well, of course, and Gilroy. I meant that it expands beyond Gilroy. Sorry. Right, the greater Gilroy area, including San Martin, Morgan Hill, Hollister, and San Juan Bautista. And that the projects will be arts. I'm reading this from the scope because I don't know if everybody looked at Exhibit B. And I don't mean council members, I mean the public too, because I want everyone to understand what we're contemplating giving money for. And it's to projects that are art experiences, performances, exhibitions, programs, festivals, murals, and things that are accessible to the public and activate public spaces. So it's important to know that all of this has to be visible, can only fund visible, publicly accessible arts projects in downtown Gilroy. That is what this is for. And I would like to see in the actual scope of the services a statement so that anybody who's reading this will see that this does have to go before the Arts and Culture Commission, because as we all know, the public wants to participate in what constitutes art, what constitutes diversity, what constitutes representing our culture, that sort of thing. So to make sure that the public can take part in all of that, then it would go before the Art and Culture Commission, where the public has a chance to be heard, and that would be then the art that is displayed. So I would like to ask that be included in the scope of services. You had it on the slide. I didn't see it. Wasn't in the written staff report that I saw anyway, but I would like to make sure that it is written so that anybody who's looking at these documents, anybody who's applying, doesn't get all the way down the road and then realize that maybe what they had in mind isn't going to work and they just spent all that time for no reason. Mm-hmm. So it's just important that everybody see it. So I'd like it to be added there.
Madam Mayor, if it pleasures the council, we can add a provision to the exhibit stating that any applicant will adhere to the city's public art policy, which does dictate the process for which the Arts and Cultural Commission reviews art.
Okay, that would work. I'm just trying to make it clear to the person. We know that, but I want it to be clear to the person who's applying so that they don't go down a road that they maybe would have made a different decision to do had they known. So if that's okay, that's the only change.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, I had my hand up to do that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is it a motion?
We need public comment.
No, we already went to
public comment already, and there wasn't any. Yeah, but it's okay. So you wanted to make a motion? Mm-hmm. Is that what you did? Yeah. It's okay. We can still have discussion. Is there a second to her motion, and then we'll have discussion?
Second, yeah.
Okay.
I had my hand up to speak though.
Okay,
to motion, but I know you've been a big champion of murals and stuff downtown. So
okay, Councilmember Armendariz, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that this is really exciting. I think it truly will elevate our cultural profile and image in our community and help lift up, local artists that haven't found a space but who are now doing so through efforts of our other artists and businesses in our community. So this is really exciting, and I'm excited to support it.
Okay, so motion by Councilmember Marks and was seconded by Councilmember Armendariz, and we can vote on the screen.
You may digitally vote on this.
Okay. Who are you missing?
Councilmember Tovar.
There we go. Passes unanimously. Yay. Okay. Sorry you had to wait so long just to hear that. All right. Okay. We are now on 11.3, which is adopt a resolution setting the 2023 fireworks service fee for impacts on city fire and police services related to the sale and use of safe and sane fireworks pursuant to Gilroy City Code Chapter 10A. And Jonathan Crick is going to give us this report.
Thank you for reading the introduction, which is the first slide. I'll proceed to the second slide. And this is the Gilroy City Code, Section 10A.8. The fireworks service fee is to be determined each year by the city's fire and police chiefs. In the past, it's been adopted by City Council resolution each year. It's intended to provide funding to primarily augment increased staffing during July 4th period resulting from fireworks activity. For the city to take actions to reduce the use of illegal and dangerous fireworks during July 4th period, we have an educational campaign. The fireworks service fee is to be paid by the Safe and Sane fireworks vendor, TNT Fireworks. The city code allows for up to 16 booths, and this year there will be 15. How or if the vendor recoups the fee from the fireworks booths is a contractual agreement between the vendor and the nonprofit booth organizations. This is not dictated by city code. The vendor typically assesses a portion of the estimated fee to each organization, which ranged from 6 to 8% of the organization's revenue. This fee is separate and different from the booth permit fee and application fee that the city charges for the operation of the Safe and Sane fireworks sales booths. Fireworks service fee for 2023. The cost breakdown for each department is in the staff report. The total cost is $56,887.32. The estimated cost for the fireworks mitigation activities are based on the fully burdened hourly rate by each position. Overtime hours to be worked at the 1.5 rate, and the number of staff needed for each position. It includes budget for fireworks safety educational campaign, which Monica, Rochelle, Sharon, and I have been working on. We have posters that get posted into the Gilroy hillside, also known as the WUI. And we have bilingual utility bill inserts. We'll also be having Facebook boosts, which are also bilingual. As for the fiscal impact funding source, the fee charged to the vendor is based on the action cost of implementing the fireworks mitigation activities, so net costs to the city are not anticipated. The cost of the 2022 fireworks mitigation activities was $53,250.59 versus the estimated cost of the 2023 fireworks mitigation activities as $56,887.32. For public outreach, if and when adopted, community engagement efforts will be implemented to share the fireworks marketing materials with the community between now and the 4th of July period. For next steps, if approved, staff will collect the 2023 fireworks service fee and implement fireworks mitigation activities. The recommendation is to adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Gilroy setting the 2023 fireworks service fee for impacts on city fire and police services related to the sale and use of safe and sane fireworks pursuant to the Gilroy City Code, Chapter 10A. And that ends the presentation.
Thank you. All right, council members, any questions? Okay, opening public comment.
No speaker cards, Madam Mayor.
Okay, closing public comment. Looking for a motion to adopt a resolution. Moved by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember Armendariz to adopt the resolution setting the 2023 fireworks service fee.
This is a roll call vote.
Okay.
Councilmember Armendariz?
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Blankley.
Yes. Okay, that's unanimous. Brings us to item 12, city administrators' reports.
I have no report this evening, Madam Mayor.
All right. 13, city attorney's reports.
Likewise.
Okay. That means you can take us into closed session?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Okay, item 14 is to adjourn to closed session. It's a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, Gilroy City Code Section 17A82. Property is 761 Tatum Avenue. The negotiator for the city is Jimmy Forbes. The other party is the owner, Mark Palmer. And under negotiations are price and terms of purchase. We do not need to take a vote to go into closed session. We do need to ask if there is public comment. And following that, we can adjourn to closed session, and then we take a vote to stay in closed session.
Okay. So I'd like to open public comment.
No speaker cards, Madam Mayor.
All right. Closing public comment and adjourning to closed session at 8:49. And we'll adjourn for 10 minutes while everything gets shut down.